and I turn around and there is just a TV camera in my face. And then I get a text from my mom like, "You were on TV." I'm like, no.
If gear is inspiring you to create, it's a great thing.
A lot of cameras, there's bikes flying 5 feet away from you. It really feels like you're like in the Coliseum. When to get the shots you need and like when to just get what you're given.
And I literally jumped over his rear wheel, slipped under me and hit one of the flag dudes. "Oh man, are you guys good?" And AC was just like, "Sorry," and like grabbed his bike and hopped back out.
Don't be a fanboy. That's a big one.
Dude, if I shoot a photo and I'm stoked, I need to communicate that, because that rubs off on the rider, and then we can have like this multiplying effect.
Even if I was shooting on a camera with good autofocus, I probably wouldn't use it because...
Welcome to the Creators Line podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Robbins. This is episode 1. So we're just kicking this thing off. A little backstory on what I hope the podcast is, just for those that are, being first introduced. We want the podcast to show creatives, and that's everything from photographers, videographers, graphic designers. We've got plans for creatives that operate in different mediums outside of kind of maybe those like more stereotypical or mainstream ones. But just getting insights on creatives' minds, how they approach their work, how they approach their industries, tips and tricks on how to elevate your own work, what they've learned through years of experience, and really just kind of like maybe given more of a front-facing view of a lot of the people that spend a lot of time behind the screens, whether it's behind the screen of a camera, a video project, a design portfolio, whatever it looks like. Kind of like shedding more light on that creative process and the personalities and the individuals that contribute a lot. So we're kicking off the podcast with our first guest, Jeff Urbahn. Jeff, super rad dude. And he was someone that I definitely kind of like outlined pretty quickly initially to have on the podcast for a variety of reasons. One, his work is just super clean. And we talk a little bit about like his overall style and aesthetic. The industries that he operates in are super interesting and appealing to myself. And I think a lot of other creatives, with kind of his vein being like action sports, a lot of snow sports, dabbling in Supercross more and more lately. But overall, just great body of work. Another aspect that I was really curious to pick his brain on was following these high-level athletes so personally around. He's got great access when it comes to, big Red Bull snow sports, Supercross track, like he's down there on the field. But then also like some of even the non-event times, he's developed these relationships with a number of athletes to where he's with them during the week in between competitions. And he's with Chase Sexton, Supercross Champion, at the test track and doing some daily vlogs with him here and there. And just a really cool perspective of more than just an event creator, that shows up on the day of the event, gets their content, delivers it to client, and then moves on with the rest of the week. He's doing it week in, week out, traveling a ton. Feel like every time I see Jeff on Instagram, he's, punching a ticket to go hop on a plane somewhere new. So it's cool to kind of hear his insight on how he balances everything that he's got going on. We talk a little bit about his upbringing in Illinois, his exposure to kind of the Moto world pretty early on, but then just how he got into the creative realm. Just him and his buddies kind of messing around with a few action cameras, like it seems like is a pretty common kind of like gateway to this industry. A lot of really good insights. I think another kind of component that makes Jeff really successful is his networking ability. He's just a nice, genuine dude, and I think that goes a really, really long way in creating those connections and then springing up more and more opportunities for him. So yeah, that's kind of a brief intro on this first podcast with Jeff Urbahn. So this is a conversation with the man. Hope you enjoy it, and let me know below your thoughts.
All right, I think we're live. What up, Jeff?
Live. What's up? How are we doing?
Cool. Well, let's start this thing. So this is episode 001. I feel funny putting 2 zeros in front of 1 because I'm like, dude, this might not even last that long. But
we'll get to 100.
Yeah, there you go. Sick. So why don't let's just jump into it. Why don't you just introduce yourself? Give everyone a little background on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Urbahn. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, I guess. Photographer, DP, director, editor, action sports shooter. So a lot of times it's a one-man show. But yeah, just commercial shooter. I specialize in adventure and action sports, and right now a lot of moto and snow stuff. Um, yeah, based in Seattle as of recently.
Sweet. Dude, that's rad.
Where are you
That's
based?
awesome. I'm in Utah.
You're in
So
Salt
good
Lake?
old northern Utah. Yeah, I'm a little south, so I'm in Pleasant Grove right now. But
Okay, nice.
grew up in this area, grew up in Tooele County area, just a little bit west of Salt Lake. And then I've just kind of hung around this area in general. But that's sick. So I saw, was it on your Instagram? You're like, I think you said something along the lines of sometime in Washington, sometime in Colorado. Just kind of depends on what's going on, or how do you split your time like that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's a little bit of a marketing scheme.
Okay.
I was based in Colorado for like 6 years, up in the mountains in Breckenridge, and then made the move to Seattle this summer. And I'm not totally sure it's going to be permanent yet. I'm here through at
Okay.
least next summer. Still have a lot of clients in Colorado, and we'll still work locally there for certain clients. So I'm kind of just keeping that on there for now so that people don't think I'm like fully disassociated from Colorado. And I mean, I try to get back there a lot. I have a ton of friends there and stuff, obviously, and
Yeah.
still have a decent amount of work there. So
Cool.
kind of situation dependent, but
Yeah. That's awesome. What part of Colorado?
I was up in Breckenridge
Breckenridge.
for
That's right. You
like
said that.
5 years, and then Silverthorne for the last year, which is like right outside Breckenridge, if you're not familiar.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm unfamiliar with the area, but I've ran into, I feel like, a ton of creatives out of Denver. Like I've worked on a few
Mhm.
projects where it's like, dude, there's a hub right there where like everybody knows everybody. How far out are you from Denver?
Yeah. Only like an hour and a half, depending on where in the city you're going.
Okay.
So it's right there. And Denver is definitely a good hub. Thought about making the move there, but kind of wanted to try something new with the PNW, and I've heard good things about Seattle, and wanted to try city life out. In Denver, it's like I know what Denver's like. I've spent a lot of time there, so I figured if I
Cool.
was gonna make a move somewhere, I might as well try something new.
Yeah.
It's been good so far.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Let's jump into a little bit of like your upbringing. I'm curious, where you started. I did like a deep dive into your Instagram because I'm like, I don't know. I love those podcasts where like Hot Ones, for instance, where they're like pulling these random questions out.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh shoot, you did your homework. I don't think I'm saying I did my homework, but I went way back and I'm like, dang, this is interesting to see like the progression of your Instagram page. It's almost like very clear sections all the way up to present. But yeah, just curious, kind of childhood, where you started, what that looked like for you, and kind of take it away from there.
Yeah. I grew up in Illinois, about an hour outside the city of Chicago, in a little farm town called Hinckley, which if anyone knows that, I'll be shocked. It's like 2,000 people, really small town. And yeah, grew up riding dirt bikes, skiing, snowboarding. Had a for growing up in the Midwest, I was really lucky. My parents got me involved in a ton of stuff, and they were into a lot of cool stuff. So we made the most with the kind of limited access that you have in the Midwest. And I would say I had a kind of abnormal upbringing for that area. So that was really cool. Got exposed to a lot of things, and then yeah, went to kind of got into filming through Moto. Actually, I guess through snow. Let me rewind. I started filming edits just like locally with my homies, like at my local resort. We were just making little park edits. I was like filming on a GoPro, like on a ski pole, like classic
Yeah.
first
Yeah,
camera.
of course.
And
sure.
yeah, got into it through that, and a moto brand, or like a lifestyle kind of brand that was doing some moto stuff locally, reached out, and that was like my first professional gig. Was like $50 to go film a couple of their riders at this like private track near my house.
Yeah.
And that was back in, I think I was a freshman in high school, maybe eighth grade, honestly. I was young.
Dang.
And yeah, we did that, and like through that just like connected with some riders, and through their sponsors and like some local media, just kind of like it kind of spiraled like unexpectedly quick. And I got some really cool opportunities in the moto industry, and kind of through high school, and then like my first year of college, I was shooting for a magazine called Moto Playground, and they cover a lot of like amateur racing in the moto world. And I was kind of their like main filmer. So I spent my summers and like any weekends I had off, or like, holidays, kind of traveling around and shooting for them. And that's, I would say, where I like really cut my teeth and got a lot of reps in, and figured out how to shoot properly, somewhat properly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I look back at some of
Yeah.
that stuff now, and I'm like, I don't know why they hired me, but it was good. It was a really cool experience with those guys. And then Yeah, I went to school at University of Illinois for graphic design and photography.
Hmm.
At that point, I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to do a career out of filming and photo. I was like definitely leaning that way, but my dad was a firefighter. Like firefighting was kind of also on the radar, and then
Hmm.
design always interested me, and that was an option that seemed a little safer at the time. Um,
Yeah.
there was like a more clear career path with that. And so that was, I don't want to say it was a backup plan because I really enjoyed design but that was like kind of my way to do like a creative degree while also having like another career path option. And I honestly, I think it benefited me a lot. I knew I wanted to go into commercial work, and the program I chose had a very like kind of art direction focused design degree. So there was a lot of like working with brands and working within brand guidelines and creating campaigns. And I think that gave me some good kind of foundation for doing commercial work as a photographer.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like it helps me communicate with like art directors and creative teams a bit better. So,
Totally. Like you
um,
understand the structure and kind of like what they're looking for as far as deliverables or like a proposal package or whatnot.
yeah, I feel like I have a better understanding of just like what they're dealing with and what, where they're coming
Mm.
from and all the work they've put in before they even, you know, reached out to me. And so I think that's helpful. And I've got some friends that I graduated with who, are art directors and are in that whole agency life. And so,
Okay.
yeah, so that was cool. I think that was a good experience. People always ask if like school is necessary for photo work, and I definitely don't think it is, but I think it helped. Like, I think there's things I learned, just soft skills, even networking
Mm.
and just how to communicate and just getting reps in. Um,
Yeah.
that was helpful, but definitely not necessary. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then graduated college and moved to Breck like a month later,
Oh, wow.
just to pursue action sports and shooting
Yeah.
action sports. So yeah,
Dude, that's so sick. That's cool. So it kicked off in 8th grade where you were like just filming with the homies, basically, right?
yeah, just like making edits that were like so bad, like really rough.
Did you
But just having
just
a fun time and
Okay. Did you just like see a GoPro, like a GoPro ad, or like see some stuff on YouTube, or like one of your homies had one, like, and you were the first one in that group to be like, dude, I'm gonna go invest in this little, fun camera? Is that, were you kind of like the trailblazer in the crew?
yeah, kind of like I just loved watching YouTube edits. Like honestly, I didn't even watch that many
Mm.
like actual snowboard films. Um,
Okay.
Probably just because I didn't have. I mean, it wasn't like it is now where everything's on YouTube. Like you had to go get an actual copy, and there
Mm.
weren't like a lot of snowboard shops around me. So um, I would, yeah, I was just watching a lot of like YouTube edits from like Midwest kids because that was what was relatable. Like I would watch.
Okay.
I feel like I didn't really appreciate some of the stuff that was like big lines and big jumps because like we didn't have that. So
Mm. Yeah.
it was just like so over my head. And I mean, I still watched some of that stuff for sure and liked it, but I really grew up on those like grassroots edits, and I love that like style. And at the time, I didn't even know it was a style, right? Like I knew nothing about shooting, but it was just like
Yeah.
something resonated with me, and I was like, I want to figure out how to make that. And I was always a creative kid. I was in art classes and like starting to mess around with doing little designs in Photoshop and stuff, and always liked
Okay.
watching like YouTube videos about that stuff. And then video kind of just seemed like the next like evolution of that.
Mm.
And yeah, I got a GoPro and started bringing it to the mountain and just kind of like pointing it at people, and it
Yeah.
worked. So,
That's cool. What did you edit on back then?
like a pirated version of Premiere.
Oh, Premiere. That's
Yeah.
dope. I was pirated Final Cut when I first
Oh,
started.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. That's cool.
Those were
That
the
sounds
days
actually,
when they actually had like it wasn't like the subscription based, and you could actually just
yeah,
get like a copy of it.
yeah, seriously though. Like those were the good old days where you could just rip it from like a homie and be like, well, I'm good for the next, however long this will last. So,
Yep.
no, that's sick. No, I was going to say, it sounds similar to me because, like, funny enough, I started with the little action cameras, but dude, I don't know what I was thinking. I started with the little Sony, I forget what they were even called. They were the Sony action cams. So they were like tiny and vertical. Do you remember that? They were like
Yeah.
faced, this way, almost like a miniature little camcorder, basically.
Dude, I had
So,
to do a whole shoot with one of those for Moto Playground. We
really?
had like one of their events was like sponsored by them, and I had to shoot for like 4 days with one of those. And this was a little bit
Dang.
later in my career when I had like an FS 700 at the time,
Okay.
and which back then was a sick camera. It could do like
Yeah.
240, and
Yeah.
And then like they gave, like I showed up, had no briefing on this, and they're like, "This is what you're filming on for the week." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
You're like, bro, I got a nice camera in my
Yeah, like I
bag.
just bought this camera and I'm gonna.
Yeah,
But those were
that's
sick. They
hilarious.
were cool back. I mean, it was all the action cams back then was it was crazy. Like they were so bulky and
Yeah,
like primitive compared to how far they've come now.
yeah. And then you throw like the waterproof case on it, and it just keeps getting bigger, you know.
Yeah.
And then the audio is funky and whatever else, just trying to make it work. But
So
no,
you came
that's
up that
sick.
same
So,
way though, just filming homies.
well, I came up later, like later in my life, I would say. Like if you were eighth grade, you know, early into like high school era, I didn't even, cameras weren't even on my radar until I was probably 20, 21, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got exposed to it late because my sister was getting into it, and that's where she like showed up with this weird little Sony action cam. I'm like, what is that? She's like, it's kind of like the cheap version of GoPros. I'm like, oh, it looks cool. And we just jumped into it from there. But yeah, that's who like I ripped Final Cut from, and we just started filming like home video stuff, you know? It's like the
Yeah.
family goes on a trip and we're just selfie sticks and putting cameras in our parents' faces and chopping it up later when we got home. But
That's right.
yeah, wasn't even on my radar until a little bit later. So I feel like I got a bit of a late start. I was a little more like sports focused, I would say, in high school. So
Like ball and stick stuff.
yeah, my
Yep.
main thing was basketball. So spent a ton of time doing that. But similar to you in the sense of like I always feel like I had a little bit of a artistic influence or like pull, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So funny enough, like my great grandpa was like a big woodworker, and then he passed that down to my grandpa, and then my dad kind of took it, and he does that a lot too, and I do it as well. But then my dad got into like airbrushing and sketching and like pinstriping, and he was like big in like hot rod kind of industry world, which kind of rubbed
Yeah.
off onto me. But because of that, I think just my family in general, like we just kind of grew up with like different mediums around, if you will, with like art. And so it was like a very natural thing of like, yeah, we're just like a artistic family almost in the sense,
Yeah.
right? And so you doodle
That's
whenever
rad.
you get the chance and take some art classes. But no, that's sick.
That's
That's
awesome.
cool too that from the jump you were kind of like in the industry that you're still in now in a sense, right? Like action sports, outdoor kind of lifestyle stuff. That's kind of your bread and butter.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of had, like started in it for sure, and that was like, I mean, that's where my passion is for like that's I love action sports, and I've always loved watching action sports, and just I would say that's like what fuels the fire. But then kind of like in college, got out of it a little bit just because I didn't have access. Like I was down at school, so there I was shooting. That's where I kind of got more of like a I guess like commercial background a little bit. Like it was for really small local companies and stuff, but I was like shooting for a screen printing shop, and I was kind of their like creative director for a few years, which was an awesome experience. Shout out Campus Inc. They were great.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
and that was like a really good developmental period, but definitely not like the type of stuff I wanted to be shooting. It was great. It was great people, and it was cool while I was in school and learned a lot, but always knew I wanted to get back into the outdoor space.
Hmm.
And snowboarding was always kind of like the main pull at that
Okay,
time. And
cool.
so then, yeah, made the move to Breck and kind of tried to get right back into that, which luckily worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. How much? So your first paid gig ever was Moto, like a little Moto thing, right? You said
Hmm.
$50,
Yeah.
and then, but the main goal was more snow sports.
Yeah, I mean, snow was a big moto. I mean, moto was also, I mean, I did moto like pretty much full time for like 3 years in high school when I was doing the moto playground stuff. I was still
Okay.
shooting snow stuff in the winter, but like most of that stuff wasn't paid because I was in the Midwest. Like there wasn't really, opportunity there
Hmm.
as much. At least like
Yeah.
I didn't really know what that world looked like at the time. So I was shooting it still, but moto was like definitely the driving force for a while. Snow was definitely like always in the back of my mind, and I really liked shooting snow.
Okay.
Um, and I would say now it's like all action sports and outdoor adventure stuff is
Yeah.
like I like having variety, and I want to start shooting more. Like I really want to get into more bike stuff, and I think that'll be
Okay.
easier to do out here in
Oh yeah.
Seattle, which will be cool. And then I really want to start shooting more surf. Would love to do that. So and then just
Yeah.
like more general outdoor adventure, Garmin type stuff,
Okay.
hiking and backpacking and all that.
That's sweet. Outside of like, you could almost encapsulate that as like outdoor industry, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
with like a pretty strong hint of like action sports stuff.
Mhm.
Is there like a very unrelated industry that's ever interested you where you've like maybe dabbled in it or seen it from afar that you're like, that's kind of a cool vibe that's different, you know?
Mhm. I mean, honestly, I think fashion stuff's really cool. Like,
Oh, really?
it's not. I'm not into that world at all. Like, not a fashion guy, but I think the shooting it has always really intrigued me because it kind of seems like there's like no boundaries. Like, fashion shoots are just crazy. Like, they build crazy sets. They have insane styling. Like, it kind of seems like you can whatever you can come up with. Typically, at least from the outside, it seems like they're down for.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And then music would be. I think it'd be cool to do some music stuff.
Hmm.
Not really, again, not a world I'm not like musically inclined. I don't know if I'm ever gonna have the background to really like succeed in that field, but um,
Yeah.
it seems like a fun thing to shoot. There's always like crazy lighting going on and
Yeah.
music videos. It seems like same thing. You can kind of do whatever if the
Yeah.
band's down. So
I've really
what
been
about
liking
you?
all like
You
the hard mounted stuff in the music industry stuff lately. You know, it seems like a lot of like really cool, funky rigs that just are like interesting perspectives seem really consistent, which is cool. So,
Yeah, I've been really into that lately. Like, I mean, I say into it as in like I'm trying to start incorporating it, and I haven't
mm,
really done a ton of it yet. But like the hard mounted rigs, like a rigging to an object or like an
yeah.
arm or something, and doing those like weird locked off like tracking shots.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that's like stylistically like one thing that I'm really like wanting to do more of coming up here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm
Yeah. I
super
had a
into it.
buddy that turned me on to more of that stuff recently where I was so unfamiliar with like the hardware that was needed for it, you know? And he
Hmm.
was just like, oh, here's the impact clamp, here's the 9 solution rod kit, the blah, 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 you know? And I'm like, oh, okay. And kind of like teaching me the fundamentals of it. But I feel like whenever it's done really well, man, it elevates a project super quickly, you know?
Yeah, it's super cool. I was kind of introduced to it through a piece that I want to say Cody Coleman did for. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He's a really talented
Mm-mm.
DP out of Denver,
Okay.
or Colorado Springs, I think. But he did a project for North Face where they had some of those, and it was like the POV of the product almost, which was really cool. And I was
That's
like,
cool.
oh, such a cool way to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's rad. What, how, explain to me more about your interest with design, because that's an area that I still kind of dabble with quite a bit. And kind of like how I was explaining to you with my upbringing, it was like kind of a big part of it. So that's cool. I didn't know that you were into design, but that's rad.
Yeah, I mean I've always loved like branding has always really like when I was doing design that was always my favorite part and I was all right at it. I don't know if I had quite as much potential there as I did with cameras, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I like I think design to me is just really satisfying. Like when you just make a really clean design and it goes from like the sketching process to like throwing things around in Illustrator and like finally it like comes together and you have that like moment and then you like clean everything up
Yeah.
and like put it on a mock-up and it's just like oh it's
Yeah,
awesome. You know,
exactly.
it's such a good feeling.
It's perfect, especially from how
Yeah.
rough it came. If it's like you said, a napkin sketch or something, that's
And
sick.
I think like working in constrictions, like which with design you always have, right? Like you've got a certain set of guidelines that you need, or like a certain message you need to convey, and you have to like work within those parameters and then like get creative. Which I think is also what I really like about photography and like especially commercial work is like and action sports work. It's like you've got like certain things that you need to communicate to the viewer and like you're always going to have limitations, especially like shooting snowboarding. It's like certain tricks are only going to look good from like a certain angle, and so it's
Hmm.
like you've got to figure that out and then like work within that the confines of that to like create the best image you can.
Yeah.
And I think that like problem solving kind of with design and then also with like commercial work and photography in general is I think my brain it just like scratches an itch in my brain, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. That's how I always explain it to, I guess, like people that ask me what I do is I always say I do photo, video, and I do graphic design. And the reason I like doing a little bit of everything is because I feel like I don't get burnt out on any one thing, you know?
Hmm.
And I can kind of like almost take seasons and say, okay, I want to like hone in, like we were just talking about, on like hard mounted shots. And then I just like kind of crank on that for like a season, whatever that looks like, if it's a quarter, a year, or whatever. But then every now and then, you know, it's like flip that switch off, turn the graphic design one back on, and then, you know, you're working on a few logo designs and graphic tees and whatever else that looks like, and just kind of like build the craft for a moment and then get back to, you know, photo work and like, hey, I don't know. One of the recent things over the last few years I've been trying to mess with more is like flash photography. Like it's just a little thing, but especially in action sports, dude, I feel like I always looked at it. I'm like, that stuff looks so cornball. Like from the old stuff I saw,
Yeah.
it was always like very front facing, harsh. And like
Yep.
maybe part of it was like the retro kits I feel like I always saw with it. But I'm like, man, that looks not appealing. And then I felt like I was exposed to people doing it well. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that's how you do flash photography like nowadays almost, you know? So motivating to then like take a step back from video and like jump into photo really hard. But that's cool.
I think they feed each other too. It's like I don't know, like because I'm the same way. Like I do I'm pretty 50-50 with photo and video, and it's kind of always like an internal debate I'm having of like, if I want to kind of level up to like a little bit higher commercial work, like do I need to kind of hone in? And I hope I don't have to. Like I hope there's a way to do both, which I think now is way more common than it used to be. But like I think like I'll be doing a lot of photo projects, and then like it'll almost like shift the way I'm thinking about stuff, and then when I like bring it back to video, it'll like translate, or like I'll look at kind of it through that same lens, or like maybe I start like processing my photos a little differently, and then I'll like carry that into my color grading, and like they feed each other, and I think it just keeps it fresh. Like I think if you do the same thing for too long, it starts to get stale, and I think the creative process like requires that like variety, not only in like the creative world, but also just like doing other stuff and like having experiences, and I think it's super important.
I 1,000% agree. I feel like we're actually really similar in like our creative approach, which is kind of interesting because I probably thought similar to you. I'm like, I don't really see that very much. Maybe I should hone in as well. But every time I get going, I'm like, nah, I want to keep it a little more interesting for myself. Maybe I've had similar thoughts where I'm like, maybe it's stunting the career, maybe not. But because I think when I was first exposed to your work was when you were doing those, it was like showing my work until I get to however many thousands of followers you were trying to get after, right?
Yeah.
I think that's when I first, got exposed to it. And it was, I think when I stumbled upon your stuff, it was like until I hit 20,000. And then you hit 20,000. It was like, okay, I'm going to keep going until I hit 30. And I was like, man, this guy's killing it, you know? And it was like all your snowboard work. I think, was that all photo? That kind of like campaign you ran for yourself was?
Mostly just because it like worked better for that trend, dude. That was like such an unexpected, crazy like social media thing to have happen. Like I was like pushing reels for a little bit. I was you know, it was kind of like a slow period. I had a lot of content. It was slow commercially, but I was like shooting a lot of snow stuff, and so I was like, I'm just gonna try to like repurpose this stuff and get it out. And I was doing a lot of reels and like photo montages, and they were like doing all right. And then I did that series. Like I saw someone do it. They were like post, you know, day one of posting until I hit X amount of followers. And it was like a little photo montage. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or they did it with like one photo. I don't know. It was like trending. Saw it a few times. And I was like, I'm going to do that with like a montage. I think that'd be cool. And it blew up. Like I literally woke up the next day and had 10K. And I think I posted it at like, I had like 7 when I posted it. And like didn't think anything of it, threw it up. I don't think like I put it on my main grid. It was just like on my Reels feed, and woke up with like 12K. I was like, what the heck is going on? I was like, all right, well, I got to do day 2, I guess. But I'd already hit 10K.
That was day 1. You got like 5K.
It was unreal. Like my phone was like blowing up. Like every time I would refresh Instagram, because it maxes out. What I learned, which I never knew before, is the Instagram notification count maxes out at 100. So like, say you gained 400 followers since the last time you opened the app, it'll just say 100. And I was refreshing my phone as fast as I could, and it was 100. Wow. Like it was psychotic.
That is wild. Day 1, son of a gun.
Yeah. So I did it for like 10 days, and I just kept raising it, and then I was like, I gotta stop this. This is like ridiculous. And it's like, I'm not trying to be like the social media guy. I mean, it's great. Like it's good to have a following, and it definitely helps marketing wise, but like I'm also not trying to like be an influencer. I'm trying to be a commercial photographer. So at a certain point I was like, all right, I need to chill out on this. But
I'm taking too many followers from all these other people is what's going through your head.
Yeah. Like it's not fair. I gotta spread the love. No, it was wild. It was like a weird experience. Really unexpected.
So you only did it for 10 days.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd been posting reels before then for sure. Like I went on like a 3 or 4 month period where I was trying to be consistent, and it was like definitely working. Like things were, you know, getting good views and stuff, but obviously nothing like that. But like a lot of the athletes I work with are pretty good at social media because it's like such a big part of it now, and One of my buddies, Ryan, is like really good at it, and he was just kind of like, just do it consistent. Like, so I'd been posting stuff. It wasn't like I like posted that day one and I hadn't been posting before and
Gotcha.
it just like blew up.
Yeah.
But yeah, then did it for 10 days, and then I haven't really been on the reels as much lately anymore. I don't know. That's such a weird. That's like another thing that I always have like a mental debate with. Is like, it's good. Like, obviously, it's good to have an active social media, and it doesn't hurt. But I also think sometimes like I found myself almost like creating for that stuff versus just like creating the best work I could. I was like almost starting to shoot stuff that I thought would like perform well on social, which was like as soon as I noticed that, I was like, all right, I'm good with that. I don't need to be doing that. Like I'm not trying to, like I said, I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm trying to be a commercial photographer, and so like I've really kind of cut back on that. Which, not to say you can't do both. It just, for me, it wasn't really working. It was like becoming a distraction. So.
Yeah, muddying up the priorities maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's cool. No, that's super rad. I feel like I've taken I don't want to say a similar approach because I got like 3,000 followers, but I just kind of almost use it as like a portfolio, right? It's like, let's just throw some fresh work in there when I have stuff that I'm stoked on, and then what happens. But no, I think your approach is perfect because it's nice to buoy up that following for some of that like initial legitimacy, right? Like, who is Jeff Urbahn from a client perspective? Pull him up. Oh, dang, he looks legit. Go through your work. Oh, dang, he's super legit, right? And then next thing you know, you're landing jobs.
Yeah, no, it helps, and like I've definitely gotten work from that period, and because now I have a following, like not discrediting it, and the people who can have a commercial, like do really good commercial work consistently, and be posting on social media all the time, and like not diluting their portfolio, is really impressive, and it's like absolutely do that if you can. But to me, I just felt like I had to, for it to like, it seems like on Instagram, if you're not posting every single day, it just like doesn't go anywhere. And for me to post every single day, I was like having to post stuff that I wasn't really like super stoked on. And I kind of at a certain point felt like I was diluting my work. So
that makes sense. Do you feel like there's other platforms that you're stoked on that are maybe less demanding from like a frequency standpoint? Like, are you on other platforms socially that you like?
Not really. I'm pretty much Instagram and then just my portfolio and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I never was like a big Twitter guy, so I'm not really on X.
Yeah, I'm same.
Facebook, I feel like, is done.
It's like the boomer platform, right?
Yeah.
Unless I'm selling something on Marketplace, I'm not on Facebook.
Yeah, no, same, straight up. That's all I use it for. It might as well be called Marketplace.
Yeah, perfect. Have you heard of Behance?
I have heard of Behance. That was big, I feel like. I mean, maybe it still is. I'm not super familiar with it, but I remember that was like in high school. I feel like I would always see projects on that, and like,
oh really?
Or maybe like I would always get brought to it. Like I'd like look up something on like Google Images, let's say. I'd be like, oh, that's a cool project, and like I'd click on it, and it would always, I feel like, open like a Behance portfolio, and I would scroll through them sometimes.
That's sick. That's cool. Yeah, I was exposed to it maybe a little more recently, like the last. Maybe it was like 4-ish years ago. I feel like I've always dabbled with like building a portfolio on a website, you know, and like hosting it or whatever with a domain. And then I got exposed to Behance probably a little late. And I was like, dude, this is kind of like the best of both worlds where it can just run and do its thing. But then I can curate these projects to basically, instead of being like snapshots on Instagram, be like a little more of a complete view of what a project looks like, you know, and all the different assets that contribute to it. But yeah,
I'll have to look into that.
The one other platform that I don't like use it like social media. You know, I use it like a portfolio. Every now and then I might go there to get like inspiration from like different projects that are, you know, like fully complete there. But
have you had like activity on it? Like, are there people using it?
Yeah. Like, it's not anywhere crazy as far as like these people are appreciating your project or you've gained this many followers or whatever. It seems like a really slow trickle. Actually, the person that exposed me to it was Aaron Brimhall. I saw that he was posting a lot over there.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm remembering correctly, when I spoke to him, he was like, dude, I get a lot of work from there even. A lot of like international stuff.
Really?
I could be wrong.
I mean, maybe I need to just throw up a few projects just to have like something if people stumble across it.
Yeah. Yeah, like Brimhall, he'll update his pretty consistently if you're familiar with him. Or he's a popular or a good photographer for 100%. His handle is Stu, Stoo. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
his work.
his stuff's sick. Dude, 100% stuff is always really sick. They
Oh,
crush
dude,
it.
they kill it. Yeah,
Yeah, they
especially
do a
between
really
those
good
two
job.
guys, like Stu and Aaron. Man, they
Yeah.
destroy. But
They did a ski
so,
project like this fall, or it came
mm,
out, the beginning of the season. I don't know when they shot it, but it was like the ski. I think it was like the ski launch for this year or something. I'm not totally
okay,
sure, but it was sick. It
yeah,
was some crazy lighting. I think they were like they did like some nighttime stuff in the pipe. They had some really cool shots in
yeah,
that one.
yeah. I think I remember that. Like they almost had like the big corrugated pipe too, with like the
Yep.
red backlight stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was a sick
no,
one.
that was sick. And then I want to say they just released something fairly new, where it's like an underwater campaign. Did you see that one from Aaron?
I don't think I've seen that one yet. I'll also go look for that.
Yeah.
Oakley just did a really sick underwater campaign for their new surf helmet. That was really
Oh,
sick.
really?
Yeah.
That's
And
sick.
I recently found out because I've been seeing like, how there's all those pages on Instagram that'll like repost like film projects and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of those pages is posted, and apparently the whole thing was shot on 16 mil, which is insane to me because
Oh, no
there's like a
way.
bunch of underwater stuff, and it's like, it's sick. Like I
Hmm.
never would be able to shoot anything like that on film. It's so impressive.
Yeah. No kidding. That's
I'll send you
crazy.
the link.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That's sweet.
I'm spacing right now
Cool.
on who the DP was on that, but I'll send you the link, and it's
Sweet. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll have to check it out. When do you feel like, as far as your career went, do you feel like there was ever a moment where it kind of like took off, where you're like, man, dude, all of a sudden I'm getting all these inquiries on if I'll go do this or if I'll go do that, and you're kind of like, how do I manage the workload? Or was it more of like, no, just a steady grind that you kind of grew into, or what's that look like for you?
steady grind for sure. I'd say like I wouldn't say there's like one moment where I can pinpoint and was like this shoot changed everything.
Yeah.
I think there's been ebbs and flows for sure. Like there's been periods where like I got really busy and then maybe it tapered off a bit and then but like consistently it's been climbing, but it's been like a wave. Um, but I think like for me, what I think has been like the shift I've noticed is like just the consistency over now, 5, 6 years being full time. Like old contacts are like coming back around, where it's like someone
Mm-hmm.
who I worked on something with kind of like secondhand 3 years ago calls me. It's like, yo, this thing just came up. Do you want to do it? Um, so that's been really cool to see. Like I feel like in the last year I've gotten to a point where like I'm I'm starting to see more connections like coming together. Like I'll be talking to someone and they'll like know someone in the industry who I know who like I would never think they'd be connected. And like the industry is just starting to feel a bit smaller, and it still feels very
Mm,
like I definitely don't think I'm like super in it yet by any means, but it's like starting to kind of feel that way. Um,
yeah.
which is cool. But I think it's just been consistently kind of just stacking on top of itself, and it's kind of like it's just been a snowball, pretty steady snowball effect. I feel like
Mm.
of, and now it's kind of gotten to the point where like I've done enough projects with enough different people that fairly reliably I get phone calls, which is great. I'm
Oh,
super
yeah.
thankful for that. But don't
That's
I mean,
awesome.
there's also definitely slow times like
Yeah.
where like okay, do some outreach. Or
Yeah.
need to
Chip into
eat
the
next month.
savings a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's sweet. That's cool. That's a cool feeling to just feel like you're in the know, basically, right? Where it's like you're not just out on an island creating in like seclusion of like, I hope this is cool. I hope people see this. I hope I can connect. But it's like more of an ecosystem that you're getting involved in.
yeah. Yeah, I think so. And again, like I feel like I'm on the fringe of that. Like I don't think I'm like inner circle quite yet, but it's like
Yeah.
I'm starting to kind of like see that happening and working. And I also think like shout out to Chase Sexton. He's the Moto guy I'm
Mm.
working with right now.
Yeah.
Um, great dude, and like it's been so fun working with him. I came on board with him like 8 months ago now, and I'm just on a retainer with him, so I'm doing most of his content. And I'm typically with him about once a month, and that's
Okay.
been really cool working with him. That was a kind of a breath of fresh air. I feel like because before that I was doing a lot of snow stuff, which I loved. And I love snow stuff, but it was like getting pretty narrow, I feel like, focused, and which I've never really loved, both from a financial standpoint, like it's a little scary to have all your eggs in one basket, but also just
Mm.
like creatively I felt like I was needing another outlet. And I was really
Yeah.
missing shooting moto, and Chase reached out, and that relationship's been really great. It's been really fun working with him, and it's been it's just given me another perspective, and like being shooting moto, I feel like it's like helping me with my snow stuff, and it's just like they work together, and it's just giving me some fresh stuff to do and kind of keeping the spark alive. And then working with him, obviously, he's one of the best in the world at what he does. So, really grateful for that opportunity, and definitely have connected with some people because of that, which has been great. So, I guess if there's like recently one kind of point where it was like I noticed an uptick was, I think that relationship helped recently. But there's been a bunch of that. Like when I started working with Taylor Gold in the snow side, that was great. Before that, like doing the Mentally Sound movies with those boys was just an awesome experience, and like definitely that was like my kind of intro to like pro snowboarding. Like actually, like not just, I wasn't like a Midwest kid anymore. I actually was like doing pro level snowboarding stuff, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So there's been a few moments like that, but
yeah, no, that's super cool. That's kind of like, I feel like where I picked up on you. It was first this guy's work is dope. Let's get him to 20K. I don't know if I was like 18, 19, whatever. I was like, that's a follow for sure. And then I keep seeing your stuff. I was like, man, this is dope. And then all of a sudden you were into Moto, and I was like, oh, dude, that's rad. I love Moto, you know? And I think after I saw you start shooting Chase, so I shot the Salt Lake Supercross that he won, right? And I was shooting with a line with us, and that was kind of like my assignment, was to follow, like shadow Chase basically for the night, because it was basically in the bag, right? With all the injuries and the crazy kind of end of season thing.
Yeah.
So I think it was the year before I had just done that. So then I saw you working with him when he made that move with KTM. And that's where I saw some of your video work too. I was like, gosh dang, dude, this guy does everything, and he does it freaking good. But that's cool because you and Chase go way back too, right? Like it wasn't just, this isn't a relationship that kicked up in the last year. It was kind of back from Illinois. Is that right?
Yeah. We actually grew up in the same area. So when we were kids, we didn't know each other like super well. We probably, I don't even know if we like really knew each other, but we definitely knew of each other. Like our parents, I think, knew each other. He's a couple years younger than me, so we were never like in the same class, but we'd like see each other at the same tracks and stuff. And then in high school, when I was like getting into filming and I was working with Moto Playground, and I like did some projects with Verb and stuff, which I feel like I'm throwing around all these like Moto terms and no one is going to know what I'm talking about. But anyway, Verb Moto was like a big media company back in the day.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did some projects with Chase because he was obviously like prodigy child, and we knew each other from back in the day, and he was local, and we had some mutual friends and stuff. So that was really fun. Like we were both just Groms. Like he was, local AM kid. I was starting to figure it out with a camera. Like one of the local guys that was shooting semi-regularly, and so we did some projects back then, and then always kept in touch. But I went to school, and then moved out to Colorado and was doing the snow stuff. So paths didn't really cross. Just kind of kept in touch over social media and stuff. And then he had a need for media stuff last spring, and gave me a call, which was really cool. So.
Yeah, that's dope. So you guys hadn't necessarily stayed super close in between then, but enough to be like, hey, you're killing it, your work looks great, like casual kind of interactions.
Yeah, exactly. Like definitely we're not
cool,
super close, but just I'd congratulate him, on good races. He'd kind of every once in a while see my stuff, and then he was seeing all the snow stuff. What triggered him calling me was he saw a lot of the snow stuff I was doing, and really just liked how it looked and like the style. He really likes that like clean aesthetic, kind of that like F1 driver social media vibe, right? Just like cleaner style. Yep. And it's and he wanted to have more like lifestyle stuff. I think he was seeing some of the like vlogs and things I was doing with some of the snow athletes, and he wanted to do more of that stuff because a lot of the moto guys like just kind of post on race day, and there's not a lot of like behind the scenes, or like a lot of the guys don't have content like from the test track during the week. And so he kind of wanted to, like, he actually brought me in. My priority with him is not even to go to races. Like if I only had 4 days to give him in a certain month, he'd rather me be in Florida with him and then miss the race.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So more kind of home base, practice track, daily vlog, the in between.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. There's probably so many resources at the race that he's like, dude, I can get what I need there, right? Like he would probably prefer your look and feel, but
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, the line guys shoot for the team. So, and they crush it. Their work is so good. That's rad. I didn't realize you were working with them when you went to Salt Lake. Those guys are awesome, and they
Yeah.
crush it during the race weekend. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, if I'm there, it's great. We get some bonus stuff. We get some stuff that looks a little bit different, but um, we definitely don't need it because those guys always do a good job. So,
Yeah. That's sweet. So Chase is hiring you directly. It's not even like through any of his sponsors or anything. It's just like he
yeah,
needs a homie that can do what he needs. That's sick. So what
yeah.
do and if I ask anything that you're like, I don't want to disclose that, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious, like what do deliverables look like for him? Like what is he prioritizing, or what's the split between photo, video, and a
It's
vlog
pretty loose.
episode or whatever?
It's pretty loose to be honest. Like, I mean, we kind of have like we talked about his goals when I signed on with him, and really for him, it's like he just wants consistent content. He wants stuff that's looks different than what other people are doing, and then he ideally wants to kind of be pushing his YouTube and growing his YouTube channel, just because
Mm,
he likes just doing that for the fans, honestly, and just to
mm,
give people insights and stuff. It's for him, he's not too worried about like we use copyrighted music and stuff, like not worried about like monetizing it, but
yeah.
um and yeah, so that's really just he just wanted to be putting those out fairly consistently. But there's no necessarily like actual like I know his goals and I know he wants consistent content. So and I know he doesn't like to post repetitive stuff. So kind of my goal whenever I'm with him once a month. So like my goal is typically he rides twice a week. And so in those 2 days I'm trying to get 4 to 5 posts out of it because then I can spread that out over a month.
Mm, okay.
Um and so typically that looks like, a photo carousel from each day and a video edit from each day for social.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then on Wednesday, Thursday, whenever, get some lifestyle stuff, and then kind of around all that, film a vlog, which
Mm,
obviously a lot of that carries over from like the filming I'm doing for social and stuff.
yeah.
It's a lot of the same footage. So it's yeah,
Yeah.
trying to do like one vlog a month and then 4 to 5 social posts is kind of the target.
Yeah. That's sweet. That's a good amount of deliverables in that span of time to knock out. That's dope.
Yeah.
And then you've gone to a few races with him, right? What's kind of like race day like?
Race days are fun. They're yeah, I go. I mean, typically I try whenever I'm with him to go to a race either at the start or the end of the trip, because they race every week, pretty much every weekend. So typically that works out. And yeah, race day is great. The team's great. They're like super supportive, and they have welcomed me in, which is great. I can they let me hang out in the rig and stuff, and kind of working with Chase. It's nice. We kind of get full access
Mm,
because of who he is, and so
yeah.
that's been good. Like get credentials and stuff like that pretty easily, and yeah, and I don't know. The race days are definitely a different vibe. Like there's during the week it's very chill. We're friends, so it's like very natural. During the race, it's
Mm,
definitely he puts his game face on. And Chase is pretty chill, dude. He's not like freaking out or anything, but I definitely try to be a little bit more. I try to be a little bit less intrusive. I pick my moments to throw the camera in his face, a
mm,
little bit more fly on the wall, pull back a little bit, and just read the room. If the day is going well and he's feeling good, then and he's joking around and all good, then yeah, we'll film some more stuff. If he's struggling a bit or not feeling the best or whatever, and he needs to lock in, then pull back a bit. And I think that
mm,
that's a skill that's important for all action sports. Like that's something that I think I've naturally always had a little bit, but also developed through years of working in the industry. It's like when you're on a trip with athletes, it's really important to know like when to get the shots you need and like when to just get what you're given.
mm,
And I think being flexible of like, okay, like my story's going to change a little bit here because I can't get an interview right now, or I can't set up this light how I want because we just got to go.
mm,
Um, and just kind of rolling with the punches with that is really important because like at the end of the day, the athlete and what they're doing is obviously the priority, right? And like you can't be holding
yeah.
them up because you forgot something or you want to light something a certain way or whatever. It's like you just got to like roll with it,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to read them and feed off of them, so that you're not distracting from what they're actually there to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a super important point. Like when I shot Supercross, that was the same thing in my head. I'm like, dude, worst case scenario, I'm that stupid camera guy that's like where he shouldn't be and is like ruining the day. So definitely just being aware, right? It's like don't get too sucked into that little viewfinder to where you're somewhere you shouldn't, or you're putting a camera in someone's face that's not having it. But
Dude, funny story. I didn't get in the way of Chase, but I like in the safety briefs that they do before every race, like for all the media guys, like you have to go to like a little briefing to get your bib for the day.
yeah,
And they're like, the main thing obviously is always like, there's a broadcast going on, like live TV has priority. Don't get in the way of the live TV cameras, which is a very fair ask. And I'm like filming Chase after he won Red Bud. He's off the podium doing his champagne spray and stuff. And I turn around and there is just a TV camera in my face. Like I was fully just in front of the TV camera. And this is like, dude, you know, shoulder rig, handheld. And I turn around and like, instead of just being a normal person and like, which is like what I'd want, like if someone was in my shot, what I'd want them to do is like turn around, blend into the crowd, walk out of the frame. What do? I like turn around, I'm like, deer in the headlights, like duck down, like run. And I'm like, I get out of the frame and I'm like, oh. Like I really hope they weren't on that camera. And then I get a text from my mom like, you were on TV.
Oh no. That is too
and it was
funny,
like
dude.
Just as bad. Like it was worse than I envisioned it in my head. Like he was way wider than I thought. So like the whole thing of me like ducking, like trying to not be in the frame, but I'm still like fully in the frame and like running out of frame. It was like a good like 10 seconds of me just being a dumbass.
Oh, that is brutal. That is too dang funny though.
So
Red Bud.
try to avoid that. Sorry to the TV crew for that one. But.
Oh, that's awesome. That is too dang funny. Yeah, Salt Lake Supercross, I remember running around. I think I ran around like the back of the start gate, and they had that big old dolly, you know, that they always like kind of whip through over like the mechanics area.
Yep.
Dude, I don't know what it was. It was like, maybe it was like qualifying or even like a heat race or something. I came running by, dude, I almost got clotheslined by that thing. Like it came sweeping through. I was like, they're not stopping. And like, I caught it at the last second, and some guy was like, hey, watch where you're going. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry, you know?
That thing has almost taken me out multiple times.
Dude,
that thing is reckless.
Massive, too, but...
Yeah, it's big. And they fly it pretty low sometimes. Or, like, the counterbalance is so long that, like, I'll get sometimes you'll, like, almost get clipped by the counterbalance when it comes around.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I remember... so I've only shot that one Supercross, but it was so sick, and... Shout out to Mike Emery for even giving me the chance with a line with us. I mean, like you said, those guys are all dope. But I think it was qualifying or practice or something, and AC was coming through this rhythm section. And I think they had just watered the track, so there was like an area that was maybe a little more loose than he thought. And he ended up getting a little squirrely, popped out of it. So he was kind of like on the like walking track on the side to get out of a few other riders' ways. And I think it was a mixture of some wet dirt, some of those wood planks that they put down, which are kind of just sketchy in and of themselves, right? Yeah. But he ended up slipping out, coming in way too hot. And I literally jumped over his rear wheel, slipped under me, and hit one of the flag dudes. And they were like in shambles on the ground. I was like, oh man, are you guys good? And AC was just like, sorry, and like grabbed his bike and hopped back out to like, you know, finish his thing. And the flagger dude was just laying on the ground, like holding his shin, just like, oh. I was like, oh, shoot, dude, are you good? And he ended up walking off and he was fine. But it's just one of those moments where I was like, dude, down on the track in the arena, such a different experience. Like, it's like a war zone, arguably, right? Like, very different, obviously. But it's gnarly, so exciting, dude. So much adrenaline, so much going on. But, yeah, it was fun. It was cool.
It's a cool experience. Like, it is, like, there's a lot of cameras. There's bikes flying 5 feet away from you. Lights, the crowd is loud. It really feels like you're like in the Coliseum. It's really cool. And but it is like, it's sketchy. Like I've had some close misses because I mean guys pop off the track sometimes, and that like the perimeter between the edge of the track and the stadium wall is like usually like 5 to 10 feet wide. Like there's not a lot of real estate there. And there's a lot of bodies there between the flaggers and camera guys and everything. So yeah, it can get gnarly. They do the best job that they can to keep it safe, but it's get out of hand sometimes.
For sure. Yeah, they definitely do a good job with like the no-go zones, right? And like trying to avoid potential for the most likelihood of areas that could cause conflict and whatnot. But yeah, no, that's cool. That's sweet, dude. That's cool to kind of hear that insight. But yeah, I was curious how that all popped up with you and Chase, just based off when I started following you, because it was cool, just that timeline. But
Yeah.
that's rad.
Yeah, I got lucky with that one for sure. But I also think that's like, I actually have a tattoo on my arm that's like crossed fingers.
Oh, cool. That's
Like good
dope.
luck. And
Yeah.
it's like kind of like for like create your own luck is kind of like one of my favorite sayings.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like in the industry, that's like so important to keep that. Like you have to be ready for those opportunities when they come your way, and you have to create opportunities for yourself. Like there is luck involved. It is who you know to a certain extent, but you also
Yeah.
have to put yourself in a position to have that luck. Like share your work. Like I always, when new photographers are like, what are you doing? Like get your work out there. Like first and foremost, like people can't hire you if they don't see you. So like even if you don't think it's ready to share or whatever, like you scroll back on my Instagram, you know how garbage some of the stuff is, but it's like back then that's what I was doing. So it's and yeah, just putting yourself in positions to succeed and like going out of your way to meet people and share your work and just always do good work. Like if you're doing good work, people are going to notice it. I mean, that's what happened with Chase. Like he liked the stuff I was posting. And I mean, to be honest with you, like based on the timeline, it probably kind of came back on his radar from those reels, which is silly to say, but like, I mean, it was like 6 months later. So it was, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if those were popping off, and it kind of like in the back of his mind, he was like, oh, like Jeff's doing cool stuff. He's like blowing up right now. Maybe not. I don't know. But, it's just like if you put yourself out there enough and it's good. And if it's not good, then keep working and it'll get better.
For sure. No, I kind of think of like just what you were talking about earlier as far as that kind of ecosystem and being in the know, right? Kind of saying you're on the fringe, right? But the only reason that happens is by showing up, like you said, and doing it, Yeah. So, yeah, I love that. Create your own luck. That's dope because 1,000%. That's how, I mean, the Chase relationship was built over 10, 15 years. It wasn't just, the last couple years. Who no,
dude, that stuff takes time. And that's the other thing is like, be patient with it. Like for people starting out, like another example, I just signed a new commercial client. And my contact there was like from a client, this marketing director and I had worked together at another brand, like for 2 or 3 years together. And she left the company like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And long story short, that company, when she left, kind of went a different direction, and I kind of lost my contacts there and stopped working with them. And my contact, the brand that she had gone to, they had like an in-house person, and so they weren't really hiring contractors. And so I kind of had like written that off as she's a great friend of mine, and we still had a great relationship, but I kind of figured we weren't going to work together while she was at that company.
Yeah.
And then like called me the other day and that they're wanting to start working with contractors now. And it's like, but that's like a relationship that I've originally started by going in to the company she worked with to see if they needed any like content trade for like a membership.
Oh, cool.
Like my first year I was in Breck, and I just hit her up on email and asked if she wanted to grab coffee. And while we were talking, we hit it off, and I just was like, by the way, if you ever need, work done, I'm a freelancer and would love to work with you guys. And that was 5 years ago. And now like this year, it's going to be one of my biggest clients. And
wow.
But it's like, it takes time. Like that's a 5-year process to get to that point, with a lot of work in between. So, yeah, it's just, but like the more of that you do, right? Like you plant those seeds and you keep planting them, and hopefully they keep coming around and you end up with consistent work.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to keep the whole process in mind, right? You can't get too hyper focused on planting and not recouping or not having anything worth planting, right? Like you got to view it as a full system there.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense. How have you gone about developing your style? We've kind of been talking a lot about just creating and building and making it just incremental improvements, basically, right? Like make sure your next project is maybe a little bit better than your last one. I feel like a big part of that is developing, like the Jeff Urbahn style or whatever it might be. What are kind of like some characteristics or some tips? Well, I guess first, characteristics that you feel like embody your style, and then how have you gone about, kind of capitalizing or developing on them?
Yeah, I think, oh God, that's like, my style is I would say clean is like one of the main characteristics. Like most of my stuff is pretty, I don't want to say like minimalist, because it's not like to an extreme. Like it's not like, you know, maybe like a fashion shoot where it's like all straight line, like crazy set, right? Like I'm shooting
Yeah.
nature and I'm shooting stuff that a lot of times I can't control. So,
Yeah.
but I think like the way I try to process my stuff and things, it's relatively clean. And then I think like my work is very driven by the action. The decisions I'm making typically are based on the athlete I'm working with and like prioritizing what they're doing and trying to make it look as good as it can. Which is, I don't know if that's necessarily my style, but that is like the leading force of my work. And it's same if I'm on a commercial project and I'm shooting for a brand, right? Like maybe the light looks a little bit better here and like the cinematographer in me is like geeking out over that, but like it doesn't show the property quite as well, or it doesn't show the product as well. Like I'm not going to shoot that then, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously in a lot of situations you can control all that and then it's best of both worlds. But I think like just that's that design background in me and that like brand background. And I think that's what creates like what's most important, right? When you're working with an athlete or you're working with a brand is like, they're the, like you have to make them look as good as possible. And when you're in uncontrolled situations, which when you're shooting action sports is most of the time, you always have to keep that is priority number one, even if maybe it doesn't align as well with like the creative idea you have, and then working within those constraints. But and then in terms of like developing my style, I think I'm just always looking at people that are better than me and like always trying new things and never like not copying. Like I never like to copy people's work. But just looking at something and like looking at a piece and just being like, okay, wow, that is like next level. And what's making it next level? Like, and trying to draw little things out like incrementally, right? Like lately I've been on a really big sound design kick, and unfortunately I don't have the time to like do it as much as I'd like for all my projects, but any like spec stuff I'm doing and like things where I have the time, I've been like trying to do more of that. And so I'll just like look at a project I really like and I'll just like pick out the sound design and I'll like try to get little nuggets of like what they're doing and like how they're working with sound. And then I'll try to kind of apply that to one of my own projects. And through that process, I've developed, you know, what I like and what works for me. And
taking like some inspiration, right, from different pieces and then kind of tailoring it towards you.
And not settling, like not like doing that for a year and then just being like, okay, this is my style. Like continuing to do that and always trying to level up and like having that attention to detail. Because like obviously the increments as you get better get smaller and it starts to become smaller things that you're looking at, right? Like in the beginning you're like trying to do composition and like get sharp shots and like really big stuff. And then it starts to get more granular as you kind of level up. I don't know. I feel like that was a terrible answer to your question, but
no, dude, that was good. I felt style is one of those weird things. It's like, it's kind of abstract too, you know? It's like one of those intangible things that it's like, it's also like the more you're in the industry or the more you're creating with a medium, the more you kind of start to wrap your head around it. But I remember when I first got into it, I was just like, style is color grade. Like that was the only thing that made sense to me, right? It was like, if my blue is more teal, then that is my style. But
I feel
that
like is part of it. But it's like a bunch of those things all combined, I feel like. And that's why it's like I can't, honestly, I don't know how to answer that when you ask what my style is. Like, it's not like I shouldn't have even tried to answer that. I'm realizing like that was me trying to put words to something that like, I don't know what my style is. I know what I like and I know how I work with my images and I know what my goal is given the assignment. And because of how my brain works, I'm going to approach that probably similarly for most projects, right? But like, you know, within the parameters I'm given. But it's not like I'm not like consciously like, I want my style to be X, Y, and Z. It's like, it's kind of just, that's my style, I guess. I don't know. Which some people might hear that and like their head might explode. They're like, how do you not know that? But I don't know.
No, I totally can see where you're coming from. Like, when I scroll through your work, I feel like clean definitely describes it super well, right? Like, I feel like your whites are super white. I would say maybe contrast is like a big element of your style that I feel like you lean into really, really well. And it like almost like ups the cinematic nature of a lot of it, right? Whether it's video or photo or lifestyle or whatever it might look like. I feel like it's like super punchy, you know?
I actually like your style, I think is like a little more like muted. Like muted's the
Mm,
wrong word because muted makes it feel like it's like flat or something. It's not, but it's very like like everything's very level. Like the
mm,
way you deal with your tones and your colors, to me, it's like it's almost subdued, but it's not at all. Like it doesn't feel
mm,
desaturated. It doesn't feel like it's flat. It still has contrast, but it's just like very well balanced,
mm.
which I love that style. And I sometimes feel like my work is, I mean, I love my work, but like lately
Oh
I've been
yeah.
like kind of like, I feel like maybe almost getting a little too punchy with it. And like I need to kind of reel things in a little bit. And I'm liking the kind of like not pushing my highlights quite as high. And like, because for a while I was like very much like, I'm going to push the highlights as close as I can without clipping,
Mm.
which
Okay.
comes from snow. Like,
Yeah.
that's a big snow influence because in snow stuff it makes sense. Like you want the snow to be bright and you want it to be white. Like
Okay.
it looks weird
Cool.
if the snow is gray, you know.
Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
now like I'm shooting moto, like that doesn't necessarily always work. So
Mm.
I'm kind of like refiguring out how to keep my style, but like not have it be like in your face contrast.
Yeah. No, I feel like you kill it. And honestly, maybe style is one of those things too that's almost like it might be easier for the observer to describe a style than it is for the individual that owns it in a sense, you know? Like
Yeah,
I think
I
of
would
some of
agree.
my favorite photographers like Garrett King, like Short Stash. I feel like I took a ton of inspiration from him. Aaron Brimhall, same thing. Like
Hmm.
local dude, love his vibe. But I feel like I could describe their styles way better than I could probably describe mine, you know?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
But
I feel the same way. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Um,
that's cool.
because when you're doing it, you don't really like, I don't know, like this. I think like this is something like that comes with the reps, right? And like why it's so important
Mm,
to just be out shooting a lot is like when you're starting out, you're really consciously thinking about like big things, right? You're thinking about like, okay, how do I frame this? Like, how do I make a good image that's just like fundamentally sound?
mm-hmm.
But then like at a certain point, that just becomes like second nature. Like you're not even
Mm-hmm.
consciously thinking about that. And then like with snowboarding, for example, like when you're starting out, you're like really like I remember my first few years of like shooting pro level snowboarding. I was like, especially in the backcountry, it was like agonizing levels of thought about like how am I gonna make this jump look as big as I can? You
Mm,
know? Like I'd be like
mm-hmm.
we'd be building a backcountry jump for like 3 days and every night I'm just sitting there like running through different angles in my head. Like, how do I do it? How do I do it? Like, should I go
Yeah.
wide? Should I go long? And like in the backcountry, like it's not like super easy to move around. So it's like you kind of got to
Yeah.
like pick a lane and then go for it.
Okay.
And but even that, like now it's like if I show up to a snowboard jump, like I've got my go-to angles. Like I know
Mm,
how to shoot it depending on the trick they're doing. And
mm-hmm.
like I'm thinking about it for sure, but it's not like it's a more subconscious thing. And there's like you start to shift your thought to other things. And like
Yeah.
I think that's the same with your style. Like you've done once you've developed your style and you're doing it, you're looking at little changes you can do. You're picking that inspiration up from people. You're maybe looking at things you want to tweak to continue to develop your style. But like the core of what your style is, you're not actively thinking about it anymore. You're just doing it. You're just executing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I agree with you too. It's like micro adjustments after, it's not like I need to alter my entire color profiles and like my whole HSL sliders all need to change because I want to work on something new.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let me just play with the curves maybe a teeny bit more on this
Hmm.
batch, you know?
Yeah. Or I've just
Or,
been like literally bumping my highlights back like a little bit,
mm-hmm.
like just bringing them down a little bit because I felt
Yeah.
like it was like getting a little too punchy. But it's like
Yeah.
so small. Like most people probably would never notice it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's the other thing too. I mean, like, yeah, we're agonizing over the sliders, like in the smallest decimal amounts, right? And then you
yeah.
publish them. The worst thing is like you pull them off your laptop or your display or whatever you're working on, pull it on your phone, and you're like, dude, that's not what I just saw on my laptop. Like, I need to go back in and make these adjustments because those greens are off or whatever.
Dude, speaking of that, I don't know, have you run into this with apparently it's like a common issue and I have not found a good solution. So anyone listening to this, please slide in my DMs if you know the answer to this. And it's probably some scientific thing that I'm just too dumb to figure out, but with like codecs or something, but Premiere like always looks a little different. I've had
Mm,
multiple people I've talked to about this. Like and it's something like it's a known problem when you export in MP4 versus MOV. They're like slightly off
hmm,
and like Premiere's aware of the problem. They like can't fix it. Like some people have made like LUTs that are supposed to correct it, but like it kind of confuses me and like I'm not even sure it works half the
yeah,
time.
weird.
Super weird. I don't know if
That's
that's
super
ever
odd.
something you've heard of or run into, but speaking of like things looking different on your phone, like there's been a couple things I've
Yeah,
exported where I'm like, what? Like
I
it's like
hate that.
drastic.
I hate it.
It's not drastic. Most people would never know, but to me, it's drastic.
Yeah, enough to bother the person that's been agonizing over making sure it's perfect, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've been using DaVinci for the last probably 4 years, so I haven't been messing with Premiere very much, but...
I gotta make the switch, I think. I used to grade in DaVinci, and I
Oh, really?
prefer grading in DaVinci for sure.
Okay.
But I've always edited in Premiere,
Yeah.
and which, I mean, up until the last 4 or 5 years, I feel like was definitely the better option. Like, I feel like DaVinci's editor just kind of caught up recently.
Mm-hmm.
But the workflow to color in DaVinci, if you're editing in Premiere, is like a major pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I just have not been able to bring myself to relearn. Like, I'm so fast in Premiere, and the thought of having to like reset in a new editor is so daunting. So I think we'll make the switch at some point, but for now we're a Premiere guy, which is almost embarrassing to say. Make it work.
No, I feel like it's still so like, I don't know. It depends who you talk to. I would say Premiere is still probably like the industry standard for editing, wouldn't you say?
For editing, 100% for editing. I think for color, it's definitely not.
Yeah, I agree.
But I will say, like, it's gotten way better in the last couple of years. Premiere has with color. Like, it's still not as powerful as the nodes in DaVinci, but if you know how to stack your layers right and you just like are good with masking and layers, like, I mean, when I'm really going in on a color grade, which like for most projects I don't because I just don't have the bandwidth, but when I really want to, like, dude, I'll have like 15 adjustment layers stacked up on a clip.
Oh wow.
That's so like you can do it. It's just not as efficient as DaVinci.
Yeah, how they're set up. No, yeah, the only reason I switched was I started shooting with a Blackmagic, and when we bought it, it was like the Pocket 4K or something, dabbled with that when it first came out. So when we picked that thing up, it comes with it, obviously, the software. And so I was like, oh, well, might as well. Jumped into it, and yeah, I've loved it. But no, that's sick. So one other question with style that I had, how much do you feel like your equipment influences your style? Like, even, I'm thinking more specifically like focal lengths. Like for me, dude, I love my 35 mil. Like if someone was like, get rid of all your stuff, you get to keep one lens, it'd be a prime 35, which I feel like is super weird because
I get that.
Like having the zoom flexibility, I totally get. Like I don't even own a 24-70 just because I'm either like 35 or I'm like, well, I'll just grab the 70-2, you know?
I'm actually really similar to you in that. I actually don't even have I have a 24-70, but it's an EF and it's f4.
Okay.
It was like one of the first lenses I bought, and I was like, I didn't have a ton of money, so I got the f4. And I would love to have one in the bag. An RF 2.8 would be great, but I haven't felt a strong, like, I think I'd buy like a prime 85 before I bought a 24-70 because I live on. I have the 15-35 2.8 and the 70-200 2.8 are like the only lenses I use.
Really? Okay, cool.
Like, I live on those, and I love them. And I think that definitely impacts style. Like lens choices. And that's another thing that you're not like, I mean, you are actively thinking about it for sure. That's a pretty conscious decision, especially in cinema if you're like getting cinema glass. And like, I mean, a lot of DPs are renting different glass for every shoot based on the characteristics, which I haven't really done that deep of a dive in cinema glass yet. But
yeah, same.
That's definitely like a pretty conscious decision a lot of people are making project by project. But for me, like, especially on the photo side, I feel like those lenses that you like just like and you end up shooting on a lot, which is different for everyone, like hugely impacts your style. And I feel like every photographer has that like one lens in their bag that they go to automatically, and that's what ends up being what you shoot the most on. So
for sure. Yeah,
the middle ground stuff, it's like I kind of agree with you. It's like I'm either wide or I'm gonna try to compress in, and I'm a big fan of compressing things. If I could only pick one lens, it'd be the 70-200 without a doubt.
Okay, I was just gonna ask you that. That's interesting. 70-2.
Huh? I really like having that compression. Like, I honestly don't shoot that much stuff wide. Like even like snow stuff. Like, I mean, I the classic like wide angle underneath the like on the knuckle to jump. You know, like that type of angle it's great, and I do shoot it. And I love doing wide angle portraits. I think those are always really cool. They're like 20 mil. But like jumps look bigger if it's a big jump. Jumps look bigger when you compress it in. And I think, and there's just more you can work with. Like play with foreground more, and you can play with the background. I don't know.
Especially with like how often you're working with high performance athletes where you can't always be like right there, you know? So like
Yeah, that
being
too.
able to have that reach where you're like, dude, I can make it work whether I'm, 100 feet away or on the other side of the track or whatever. So,
Yeah, the reach is super important. Like that's, obviously in an ideal world, you have access to the athlete, and a lot of times you do. But like I was saying earlier, like those moments where it's like you need to be a bit more fly on the wall, and like
yeah.
when Chase is going out for the main event, like I'm not in his face with a 15 mil, like I'm pulled
Mm-hmm.
back a bit. Um,
Yeah.
save that for qualifying, like I'll get those
Mm-hmm.
shots, but because yeah, like the last thing you want to do is just be like that guy, which
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're honestly, I don't think it bothers Chase. Like, and I will shoot wide sometimes in semi-high intensity situations, but like
Yeah.
they're so used to it. But if you don't know the athlete, like if you haven't worked with them a lot, and you're not sure if they're cool with it. I don't want to be. I'm just not that guy. I don't want to shove a lens in a guy's face like right before he drops in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna. I just won't do that.
Yeah.
So
No, that makes sense. How would you recommend someone navigate figuring that out too? Where it's like, do you just ask straight up like, "Hey, what's the expectation here?" Or is it more kind of how you had mentioned it before where it's like read the room, and just with some experience you'll figure it out. But
I think a little bit of both. I would say if you don't have a great relationship, just err on the side of caution. Like have respect. Um,
yeah.
I think that's always a good safe bet. But also like you got to get your shots, and obviously like the athlete wants the shots too. So if you think the wide angle is the move, then like I don't know, don't be overly cautious. But I think that you can get more bold as you have a relationship with riders, right? Like there's some photographers in snow, and myself included, with certain athletes. Like I have free reign. I can do what I want, right? Like I have a really good relationship with them. I know they're gonna be fine with it. I know it's not gonna get in their head. Um, and there's some photographers who like are known in the industry, and like athletes want photos from them, and they can do what they need to do. And again, like I think I'm way overthinking it. Like I don't think it really gets in people's heads that much, right? Um,
Yeah.
but it just depends on the situation, like especially like an emotional, like they just fell,
Mm.
they missed finals. Like don't run up to them with a 15 mil, throw it in their face, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but no, sorry, to get back to your original question, how to kind of develop that relationship. I mean, for me, it's just like forming a personal relationship with people is really important. And once you've worked with an athlete for a while, you have that. And obviously, in some situations, when you're on assignment, you don't have that
Mm-hmm.
longevity. So in those cases, I think, yeah, talking to them, being like, hey, I'm here to document this. Um, you know, what the line I like to go with is just like, if I'm ever being a pain, just wave me off, and I'll get the hint. Like, you don't even have to say anything. Um, and I just give them a heads up, and they're usually like, yeah, all good. Do what you need to do. But then at least you've thrown that disclaimer out. It doesn't have to be in the back of your head,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
you can do your job. They can do theirs. They know you're there. They know who you are. And if you say that and they're like, yeah, okay, and they're like a little more hesitant, it's like, okay, I'm probably not gonna I'm gonna back off a bit, and I'm gonna
Mm.
shoot a little bit longer and
Yeah,
chill out because it seems like they're a little bit hesitant. So
that's smart. Kind of base it off their response to that initial, like set the expectation basically.
yeah, exactly. So
Oh, that's cool.
that's
How do you go about like building rapport outside of just time? Like because I think that's like an obvious one, right? Like the more time you spend with specific athletes, the more you'll be able to build that rapport, kind of like have the small talk, the casual talk. But say for instance, you see this athlete once a year, twice a year, like
yeah.
it's super chill. Or maybe you see him for the first time and you're like, dude, I might not even see you again, but I want to make sure I leave an impression that is positive to hopefully build if like we get
hmm
the opportunity, right? How do you navigate that?
I mean, generally speaking, and this is like the most broad and worst advice ever, but just like be cool, like
Yeah.
don't be a fanboy. That's a big one. I see some
Okay.
photographers like it's like don't be professional. Number one, you don't have to cool guy them. Don't
Don't
be
ignore them.
standoffish, right? But like
Yeah.
just be normal, and that will go a long way. And then also I think having like introducing yourself, just talking to them like a normal person, and setting the expectation of who you are and what you're there to do is great, because now they know, like, you're not just another random guy with a camera that they don't know who you're shooting for, they don't know why you're there.
Mm.
Having that introduction and like letting them know what you're doing, um, is that goes a long way, I think, of like leaving a good first impression. And like they're going to be more willing to work with you if you're like, they know you're shooting for their sponsor, or they know you're, you know, like it's going to benefit them. So why
Yeah.
wouldn't they want the shots? And then I think like following up with photos, it would be another one. Like if you can, obviously sometimes depending on the assignment, maybe you can't give the photo directly to the athlete, but like
Oh,
I
okay.
always try
That's
to get
cool.
their contact and like shoot them some photos. Especially if I'm going to be on a trip with them for a couple days, like say I'm rolling up to Mount Hood, right? And like I'm with Taylor, but I'm going to be shooting with these other guys kind of that maybe I don't know as well.
Yeah.
Day one, I'll try to get a shot of everyone and airdrop it to them the next day on the mountain. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, this is
Mm.
fucking sick. And you just
Mm-hmm.
got me a shot day one. And, and I'll just be like, hey man, like, yeah, if you see me on the deck and you like have something in mind, just flag me down.
Yeah.
And now they're just like, okay, this dude got a sick shot of me. He's down to work with me. And some people will not take you up on that. And just, you might not, I mean, you're not going to be able to build a rapport with everyone. But
Yeah.
just being approachable, being a friendly guy, and just being open with them. Like at the end
Oh,
of the
yeah.
day, they want shots too, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
benefits them. And so just trying to like work together with them, I think is
Yeah.
the best way to do it.
That's huge too. I think the quick turnaround thing is always one of those things that like can be that awe factor too for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like to your point, it reminds me like shooting Red Bull Rampage, for instance. Like one of the first
Stuff was
days I
sick,
just
by the way, from that.
oh thanks, it was dope. It was a fun event, but I shot a bunch of the diggers because they're all like super cool dudes, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're also dudes that are just working their butts off, like
Oh yeah.
with no expectation, basically, right? They're just like, we're gonna put on all these long hours. So one thing I did was first day shot a bunch of diggers, and then same thing next day edited it, and then next day on the hill I was just like, hey, like snagged a few of these, and like all of their faces just light up. They're like, oh dude, that's so sick, like
Yeah.
thanks so much, text it to me, email, blah blah blah. And then next thing you know, the rest of the week you're walking up and it's like, oh hey, let me help you with that bag, or hey, how's it going, you know. And then
Yeah.
next thing you know, intros with riders and intros with other partners. And it's
Yeah.
funny because I think sometimes like our deliverables can get so mundane almost, you know. Like you shoot your work and you're like, yeah, this is up to my standard, and I might say the same thing, but then you show it to someone that is just basically exposed to like iPhone clips all day, and they see like really professional work and their eyes light up. They're like, dude, that's so nice.
Yeah.
And the super popular phrase, you have such a nice camera, right? Yeah. It's always like a little infuriating, but regardless, it's like, I think to your point, just remember that what you can deliver, what you can offer has a ton of value, you know, even if it is labeled just a photo or just a clip or whatever it is. Like the quality is something that people maybe don't necessarily interact with a ton. High performance athletes, I would say, are a little different because like they see that of themselves a lot more, but
Yeah.
some of like the supporting characters, I think, get stoked.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do very similar things. And I mean, it's all that same thread, right? Just be cool and be, I don't know, it's like it is easy, like that same thing that you were talking about, like sometimes your work, you hold yourself to a higher bar, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. And I think that that's what good photographers all have in common, is that like we're never really satisfied, and like we're always looking at like how to improve. And that's super important. That's, at least for me, that's like a huge part of my creative process.
Oh, yeah.
But that also leads to you kind of forgetting, like you have to appreciate where you're at and like look at your work and be like,
Mm-hmm.
holy shit, like I do good work, and give yourself
Mm-hmm.
some kudos in that sense. And I think along that same thread is like oh God, I just derailed myself. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, you're good.
Oh, just remembering like that, because I think sometimes like we're in these, like as photographers, you just naturally end up at like a lot of really cool experiences, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for that to cameras. Like it's brought
Oh,
me
yeah.
crazy places and like cool events, and I've met people that I would never have expected. And but over time, like it can start to feel like the norm. And I think just remembering like, whoa, like having that gratitude of, I'm in this really cool place right now, surrounded by really cool people doing really cool things, and just having genuine interactions with those people. And you know, like we're all there for the same purpose, and like we're all doing this cool stuff. So just like, yeah, snagging the photo of the homie
Mm-hmm.
and sending the next day, or you know, just, I don't know, just soaking it up. And like I think if you, and being gracious to the riders, you know, like being
Mm.
stoked to like work with them, and getting that hype around a shot, right? and like working with them. And some riders will give you more than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you can, like, be stoked to be there, be throwing ideas out, be communicating, and just like soak it up. And I think if you do that, that's a recipe for making connections and having a good time and just producing good work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think that's super key. I think oftentimes maybe it's just like a characteristic of being behind the camera. There sometimes is a little bit of an insecurity almost, right? Of like, I'm not the one being photographed, or I'm not the one in front of the camera. So I just need to make sure that I'm not in the way. I'm slinking back. I'm not imposing. I'm not,
Right.
It's almost like the list of I'm nots, which sometimes can be tricky from, you need to go into situations with confidence, right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned it too, just being stoked on your work in the moment. I think that's something that's like so contagious. I remember when I would first start shooting, I was like very questioning whether or not I was getting it, like some of the first mountain bike stuff maybe I shot. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is the right angle. I don't know. And I think that starts to bleed onto the riders, and they're like, well, do you even know what you're doing, bro? Like, tell me what you want and I'll do my best and we can work together. But I feel like the more experience I get, the more I'm like, dude, if I shoot a photo and I'm stoked, I need to communicate that, because that rubs off on the rider, and then we can have like this multiplying effect where they see that I'm stoked, so that almost instills a little bit of confidence in them, and then they can kind of rest assured that like I've got my responsibility under control, and then they can focus more on doing what they're doing. And then kind of like you say, next thing you know, by the end of the day, it's like you guys are homies and everyone's stoked on kind of like the results of what all this time went into, and resources and whatnot.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's super important. Like, just that energy of feeding back and forth, like you said, it is contagious. And if you're stoked, then they're like, yeah, let's do it again. Like, let's get, like, I want to do it better. And then they do it better, and then they're stoked. And then it's just like, it just feeds. And, yeah, and there definitely is. I mean, there's like, the imposter syndrome is real. And there's definitely, I feel like it's getting easier and easier the longer I'm around it. But like, there's definitely people where I'm like kind of nervous to like go up to them or introduce myself, and which is so dumb. Like, there's no reason for that. Like we're all here, we're all doing it, and like athletes are just homies usually.
Yeah, they're just normal dudes
they're just normal people.
Dudes and gals that do things super sick. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that confidence thing too. I think like when I was saying early in the career, I'd like stay up all night, like trying to figure out what angle to shoot from, and like we kind of have a running joke in that crew that I'd be like, of like, where's your apex gonna be? Because I'd be like over planning shots, and I'd be like wanting to make sure they're like in this little pocket, and like, I'd like ask them to stand on the lip and throw a snowball, and be like, because they always throw the snowball to like check their landing, like kind of get an idea of speed and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And they'd like throw it, and I'd be like, was that accurate, you think? Like, is that where your apex is gonna be? And they're like, now that we know we've spent a lot of time together. This was like early in our relationship. We always joke because they're like, dude, I don't know where the fuck my apex is gonna be. Like, I'm just guessing on this as much as you. Like, you're the photographer. Like, you should know, which is so true. And like, I overanalyze that stuff, and I had a lot of confidence issues early in my career, and I mean, those guys were all super cool about it because I was really green, and they were very welcoming and nurtured me. But
key.
if I had come in with that attitude to like a Red Bull shoot, like that would not have been good,
Yeah.
So, but that's part of it. You learn that.
Yeah, that brings in a good dynamic too. It's like, it's one thing to have the rapport with the athlete. It's another thing if clients, on location, to make sure that you're, communicating or coming off as someone that they can trust,
Yeah.
Because oftentimes there's a disconnect, almost, I would say 100% of the time, right? From the time you click the shutter to the time that they see the deliverables, and they can formulate a whole opinion on, dude, this Jeff guy is dope, and I haven't even seen a photo from him yet, right?
Yeah.
Which, that's a huge feather in your cap. Or it can go the other way, which, dude, that can be just as damaging, where it's like, never hiring this guy again, and then you see the work, and it's like, the work's pretty good. No, I already said, nope, I'm not dealing with that guy again,
I mean, I firmly believe two people could deliver the same photo, and if one guy sucked for the week that you were spending together and the other guy was awesome, like, they'd look at the same photo and be like, this photo is not that great, or they'd be like, this photo is fucking sick. Like, the personal side of it is so important in this business, especially because we spend a lot of time together. Like, when you're on trips or you're on assignment, like, I mean, there's not a lot of shoots that are only a day. And even if it is only a day, you're probably spending 12 hours together. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, not to mention video calls before and video calls after and emails and
Mm-hmm. Dinner, driving,
yeah, yeah,
travel
like,
time.
and if you're just a bummer the whole time, then like your work can be the sickest ever, but you're probably not getting a call back, honestly,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of people who do good work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not unique. So it's, now you have to have good work too. It's a combination of the two, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just don't be a bummer. Like you know, and you don't have to be the coolest guy in the room. That's not, but just be friendly and like don't be negative about stuff. Don't be the guy
Yeah.
on set that's complaining about everything, especially if you're with the client.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you've got to be stoked and you've got to be confident. And if something's going wrong, you've got to be solving it without them knowing that anything's going wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a good producer buddy who he was telling me about one of like, he's like, this is one of the worst projects I've ever been on, but the photographer the entire time was just saying, this is not working. This is not working. And it was like, the light's not working, the location's not working, the whatever it is. I think that's one of those things too that we can almost all catch ourselves thinking, at least, where it's like, man, I got like this photo is not what I had in mind, right? But like, don't communicate that. Because then, yeah, the whole team's like, well, shoot, are we wasting our time here? Or,
Yep.
what do we need to do? They're problem solving with you. But
Well, and if you fix it, but they've like now that you got this in their mind, and then maybe they don't know that you fixed it, right?
yeah.
Maybe they walk out of the room and then you figure it out and you're all stoked, but like they didn't see it. Now, like in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
they've already got this, like you were saying earlier, like this connotation that like it's not going to be a good photo, and it's just, I mean, again, like you're just spending a lot of time together. Everyone's busting their ass, so the last thing you need is like someone being negative and bringing the
Mm-hmm.
vibes down. And yeah, and I think too, like just, I mean, it's an easy thing to fall into. Like I'm sure I've done it. I've definitely thought it. I think it on almost every shoot, and I've probably said it out loud when I was younger in my career,
Yeah.
of like just being stressed, like a ball of stress
Mm-hmm.
that this isn't working. And it brings everyone down, and it also like it clouds your mind up and you just get in this panic mode and then nothing works. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to like figure out a solution when you're in that mental space. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
the confidence, like you have to have that confidence in yourself, which is hard to have. Like it's still something I struggle with.
Yeah.
And when you're on a
Especially
big
early.
shoot that's like a, like a level up type of client where you're like, this is the biggest shoot I've ever done, it's scary. And it is hard to be confident in those situations. And a lot of times you might not be, but you've got to try to like trust in your process and trust that like it's going to work out. How many hundreds of shoots have you done before that turned out great? And
Mm-hmm.
you had struggles on that it worked out, and again, that's like reps is like the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
Like it, and I've on so many levels it applies. And I think like when you're in those situations, you have to fall back on those reps and that work you've put in and like trust that you know what to do, and just take a moment, take a breath without being a parent about it,
Yeah.
recenter
Yeah.
yourself,
Not a
put on a
big old
smile,
sigh. Yeah.
and like go shoot,
Mm-hmm.
so.
No, I think that's
And
super important.
And I think like also being kind to yourself, like we were saying earlier, like when you're in it, like you always want to be better and you want to level up and you want to, but like sometimes a shoot just might not be your best shoot, but it's
Mm-hmm.
probably still going to be really good. Like if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like maybe it's not quite what you had in mind, and maybe you're a little bit bummed internally because you thought this was going to be like the sickest thing ever, and it's like not. It's good, but it's like not what you expected. But I mean, sometimes that's just how it goes. Maybe your talent's not really vibing, or maybe the lighting, maybe you got a cloudy day, or maybe whatever it
Yeah.
is, right? And you have to be okay with that. And the more you shoot and the more professional projects you do, I feel like you start to understand that and like be okay with that. But like you can't hinge too much on like one shoot. Like you have to look at it over a longer period. And I think if you
Yeah.
do that and you're just like, okay, we're going to get through this shoot, we're going to get the deliverables we need, we're going to do the best we can given the circumstances, and we're not going to like act like this is going to tank our whole career, because it's not going
Mm-hmm.
to. It's a lot easier to like push through those things, I think.
Yeah. And I think too, oftentimes, at least for me, sometimes like I'll be in the field shooting, and on that teeny little LCD screen, dude, it's hard to know if it's good or not, So sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
can trick my head into being like, man, this is trash. This is not working. This is blah, 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 all the things going in your head. And then you get back on your computer and you're pulling it up and you start touching them up, making little tweaks here and there. And you're like, okay, this is working, you know, like my
Fix
presets
it,
did not fail me today, you know?
fix it in post, baby. Fix
Yeah,
it in
exactly.
post.
So 100%, like when you're on set or in location, like, dude, just fake it, even if you're questioning, but
Yeah,
you,
fake it
you
till you
might
make it.
surprise yourself in post. So
Yeah, that
for
happens
sure.
more often than not, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of tricks in the editing arena that you can swing some stuff pretty dramatically nowadays. But
Yeah, I mean, raw stuff is so good. You can do a lot.
yeah, a few gradient filters later and you're like, dude, it was sunny.
Yeah, well, sky's
But
falling.
yeah, no, that's cool. I didn't even ask, what equipment are you using? I think you said RF lenses, right? So your Canon stuff
Yeah,
fully?
yeah. I'm for stills. I'm on the R6,
Okay.
in the mirrorless ecosystem, and then uh, for motion, I'm on a Red Komodo, um,
Okay.
so which is native RF, which is super convenient for me.
Oh, that's super nice.
And honestly, I'm shooting most of my video stuff is um, on my photo glass, which isn't necessarily what I prefer. I would love
Okay.
to have like a cinema kit, and be renting glass more often and stuff.
Mm.
But a lot of the action sports projects I'm working on like don't have budget for rentals, and I'm doing a lot of hybrid shooting. And when you're in the backcountry or you're out at the motocross track, it's hard to have a full cinema kit and a full photo lens
Mm.
kit.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's heavy too.
and just honestly, like for myself, like my business, having a full photo set and then a full cinema set, like owning that is not super efficient. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of one thing, like I'm trying to shift into more cinema stuff when I can. But right now I'm shooting most of my stuff on photo glass, which
Okay.
I mean, I like how it looks. I don't have there's some characteristics I'd like to get out of like cinema glass,
Yeah.
that I don't always have, but it
Dude,
works.
post. Fix it in post.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
fix it in post.
No, that's cool. How do you, I feel like personally, I have a really hard time balancing photo and video on the same project. Like, it's one of those
So
things
hard.
that, I think I'm like slowly getting better at, but I far prefer a project where I can just show up and be like, you are photo today. So I can just like hone in on that visual. But when I am hybrid shooting, dude, I feel like I almost do two projects that are unacceptable,
Yeah,
rather than like one where I'm like, okay, I'm stoked. How do you
fully,
balance that?
fully agree to start
Okay,
off.
same page.
Um, Ideally, I don't do hybrid stuff when I can avoid it. Or if I'm doing it, which I mean, I do have to do a lot of hybrid stuff, but I try to split it up in my mind. So like, for example, with Chase, I'm doing hybrid. Um, but I'll like be like, okay, today I'm only doing photo. Or like this
Okay.
moto, like say he's gonna go do 220s for his training for the day, like two 20-minute motos. I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
first moto, I'm not touching the video camera, and second moto, I'm not touching the photo camera. And I'll just lock in to that
Mm,
thing. Um,
okay.
and on commercial sets, it's a little harder to do that. I mean, I'm really like trying to not take on hybrid jobs when I can avoid it, but like some of my clients, it's just the reality of it. And um, for one, I level set early on, and I say, what's the priority here? Do we want photo more, or do we want video more? Um, and sometimes you kind of have to shoot both in the same moment because you're in a set and are shooting a scene and you need that scene for both. Um, but I'll usually like prioritize whatever the main thing is. I'll shoot that first, be really happy with it, and then typically like once you're really happy with that, you've kind of figured out like what's working well, and then I'll usually just run one more take and do the other,
Mm,
which kills the creativity a bit for sure because you're not like the one that's not priority is kind of just almost getting like it's a little
it's
bit
a
of an
little,
afterthought, like you're just kind
yeah.
of copying what you do, and it's not that black and white. Like I'll definitely have certain shots in mind, but that I do differently for each. But
Yeah.
it's hard, and it definitely, I would say, impacts the overall project compared to if when I'm on set just shooting photo or on set just shooting video. I'd say typically the final outcome's better, but
Yeah.
that's just the nature of the
Okay.
beast. So
That makes me feel better because I was like, dude, I don't know how these
yeah.
guys do it, slinging both so well. But
No, you're not alone. And like at the races, for example, like I don't even touch my photo camera. I'll do some stuff around the pits because I've got so much time. But when I get out on the track, with Chase at like Supercross races, like Alion's
Yeah.
doing photo. I don't need photo. I'm just shooting video for the vlog and for an Instagram edit. So it's like
Nice.
picking your battles. I think it's like when you're gonna have time and you can do both, do both. But like when you can, as much as I can, I separate them into chunks, and that way I can like do one, do it well,
Yeah.
and then like bring it back over. And when you're forced to do them both kind of simultaneously, then do what you can. And I think pre-planning helps a lot too with that. Like if you have a pretty good shot list in your mind already and you like have an
Yeah.
idea of what you want to do and like the effects you're going for, and if you kind of like get the creative heavy lifting done beforehand and you've got pretty good notes, that also can help, because then you can kind of just like make those happen, and you get less of the on impromptu kind of on the fly stuff, which is sometimes when the best moments happen, and that's what you miss out on when you're doing hybrid.
Yeah. That's a
But you
good
at
way to
least
put
hit
it.
your marks and do what you need to do. So
Yeah. No, I fully agree. The importance of a shot list is like unrivaled in my head, especially in that like run and gun environment where it's so easy to get frazzled. And then for me, at least my experience, you pull up that shot list and it's just like, oh, this is a grounding moment for me to realize I'm actually like chipping these stuff away, or, you know, like knocking it out slowly by slowly. You know, you're not
yeah,
as swamped and like, dude, I'm not getting anything right now, you know? So,
yeah, because I feel like sometimes you overshoot. Like in action sports, I feel like specifically it's really easy to overshoot because there's a lot of cool stuff happening, and you're just like, oh my
mm-hmm.
god. And it can be easy to like get tunnel visioned into like one thing and like shoot it for too long, and
Yeah.
have way too much of that one thing that you don't need. And it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to like come back to your shot list and be like, okay, I've got my wides. I can go in for this like tight detail shot I wanted to do, or I can go in for this, lifestyle shot I needed, or whatever. It's like
Yeah,
shift your it just like keeps you on track, which is good when you're kind of
for sure.
frazzled, which, let's be honest, we mostly always are.
It's so easy. So easy to get frazzled down there. But
It's a
what made
fast-paced
you go?
environment.
Yeah, exactly. What made you go Komodo outside of it being native RF?
It was a long debate. I was considering the FX6. I
Okay.
was considering maybe a Canon. Kind of rule out Canon pretty quick because they're big.
Yeah.
This was pre like R5C, which I
Okay.
still don't think I would have gone that way. But for me, it was the form factor was really like because there's so many pros and cons of both. I think Red Raw and the form factor were like what really sealed the deal for me.
Okay.
The Komodo is so small. Like when it's just the camera and you take the cage off and you take your monitor off and everything, it's tiny,
Mm.
which for me is awesome because if I'm like let's say I'm going on a skin, like going on tour somewhere with someone and like need a really light pack, I can just pare it down so small and like only bring the essentials. Or if you want to fly it on a gimbal, it's really easy to do that. Like there's just more, it's more modular, and you can kind of like design it for the shoot. If you want to
Mm.
rig it out really big, you can. And then Red Raw is like, I have edited some of it in the past and I knew how easy it was to work with. Like for one, it's got a ton of flexibility and it looks, in my opinion, it looks great. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a beautiful image and it's super flexible. And then also it handles really well it's really easy on computers,
Oh,
which I think is a
gotcha.
misconception. Like the files are massive. I mean, I burn through data, but as long as you've got the drive space, which I order hard drives for every single project, so
Mm.
that's another kind of part of it. But like the actual file, because of Red has like I don't know all the science of it exactly, but they have like a proprietary compression system that like they've kind of got the like trademark on and no one else can really use, and it like
Oh,
makes the
cool.
files way more manageable. Like my
Hmm.
MacBook Pro, I can like edit like 8K stuff with no problem.
Wow.
um and like even like I'll be editing like 6K stuff off the Komodo and like have 15 layers on it during like an intensive grade,
Yeah.
and I'll have it at like half quality, so it's like previewing pretty high quality
Yeah.
on like a small preview window, like it looks full quality and really doesn't buffer, which
Wow.
is not my experience with other codecs.
That's
So
awesome. That's dope.
yeah.
How, and it sounds like you've just been doing it long enough to where it's not even much of an issue, but manual focus with action sports, I feel like that's always something that comes up with guys like polling,
Yeah.
right? It's like, dude, how do you, especially someone closing the distance,
Yeah.
how have you approached that in the past? What are like maybe some tips or tricks that you found work well for you in the field?
I think I hate to say it again, reps. just putting in the reps is a huge part. Like when I actually started shooting with Chase again, I was like, oh man, I forgot how hard this was, because in Moto it's so much faster in Moto, and like rhythm sections are so long. Like when they're just coming straight at you in a rhythm, it's a long pull.
Yeah.
And it is hard, and I mean I do miss it sometimes. Like I definitely don't nail every shot.
Yeah.
But generally, like general tips that are more actionable, I would say, is if it's a really critical shot, like it's the finish line shot or something, a lot of times I'll just lock off at the apex. Like I'll like pick focus where I know he's going to be like at the apex of the jump, and I'll maybe stop down to like F4 or something. Like I won't be fully wide open, and I'll let the main moment happen, and then I'll start pulling focus for like the reaction or whatever, or like the next corner or whatever it might be. That's like the safest way to do it. And like, yeah, like if you're delivering like a Nike ad, that's not acceptable. But if you're shooting a social edit for a motocross rider,
Yeah.
it's okay.
It'd be all right.
And you know, when it's critical and you can't have the risk of missing your pull, that's one option. And then mostly it's just time with it. Like I'm so used to my lenses now that like generally I can get pretty good focus. And I think like for me, even if I was shooting on a camera with good autofocus, I probably wouldn't use it, because I'd rather have my focus pull be a little bit soft, but it's like consistently pulling, than have that like focus hunt. That focus hunt to me is like immediately that shot is not usable. I hate it when I see that in work.
It's terrible.
Like that kills a project for me.
Pulls you right out of whatever moment you're trying to put the viewer in, you know?
Brutal, man. Like let it go soft. I'd way rather have soft focus for part of the shot. That's fine with me. If it's not that like little like terrible.
Yeah.
So, and I know some guys make AF work and do a good job with it, and for certain applications it's absolutely helpful. If you're like doing a really tight portrait and you're tracking someone's eye and there's not a lot of movement happening, and like I'm sure in those situations, and like if you're on a commercial set where you can if the focus does hunt, you can reshoot it, then absolutely. Like if for that shot, that might be the best tool, because you can like keep it tack sharp on the eye the whole time.
Yeah.
But for action stuff, it usually doesn't work that great, and so yeah, it's just years of doing it, and you figure it out, and you miss some shots, but you also miss some shots with AF if it fucks up. So it's like
yeah, for sure. Know. You're not gonna have 100% efficiency either way. So
no. And typically, like for most shots, like the main moment, if you're at F4, even F2.8, and you pick like a main point, especially if it's a lateral shot, then like, I mean, you don't even need to pull for a lot of shots.
Yeah.
I've found.
Yeah, that's a good
like
point.
It's gonna be acceptably sharp. You're not shooting a photo, you're shooting video at 24 frames a second with a lot of motion blur already. If it's 98% in focus, you're good. And if you're shooting a lateral shot, like you probably don't need to pull for local shot. And again, like a lot of times I'll set it, and then once that main shot that I was set up for happens, then I'll start pulling. And like if I miss it, then I can cut the clip. I've got the main moment. But I don't know.
I think you bring up a good point too. Like, don't be afraid to stop down. You know, like just because your lens can go to 2.8 or 1.4 or whatever, like especially in action sports, doesn't mean you always need to be shooting there. You know.
Oh, I think some things look better.
4, 5, 6. You know.
Like I've that's been something I've actually been really pushing more myself to do, because I feel like, I mean, this is a common thread, I feel like, in photography, but like when you start out, you like always want to shoot wide open, and I still shoot wide open a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I've been stopping down a lot more, just like for photo as well. I think there's like I want more background sometimes, or I want their whole face in focus. You know,
just stylistically. Right?
Yeah. And same with video. And also with video, again, like when you're shooting really fast moving stuff, you're going to have so much motion blur anyway, at least on a red, or if you're like any cine camera that you're shooting at 180 shutter angle at 24, like you're going to have a lot of motion blur, which your background's going to be blurred out anyway. So why does it matter if you're at 2.8 or if you're at f4? Like it doesn't. Now, if you're shooting a tight portrait, absolutely stop down, get that nice fall off. But in those situations, it's way easier to pull focus because it's not moving fast. Like I can pull focus on a face all day. Now, well, that's not true. I miss shots, but and would I love to have an AC pulling for me? Absolutely, but that's just not the reality of the situation in a lot of the settings I'm in. So
have you messed much with like a physical follow focus? Do you like pulling that way, or do you prefer on the barrel?
I pull on the barrel, which is kind of problematic because you do get some shake sometimes. I've been thinking about going to a follow focus.
Mm.
I mean, I have one. I use it sometimes, but when you're handheld, especially, like it's just an awkward point to hold because it moves. Like
Yeah.
holding the lens underneath and then just pulling with your fingers is like such a natural, for me at least. Like that's how I've shot my whole career, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to it.
Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
I think again, it's just more, it's quicker, right? Like nothing's there to get in the way, which when you're running and gunning, it is paramount.
Yeah.
And so again, that's just, I mean, if I'm on a commercial set and I can set everything up and I can have multiple takes then yeah, absolutely throw on a follow focus and
Yeah.
dial it in, or ideally have an AC pulling for you.
Yeah. For sure.
But it's like the right tool for the job, you know. And right now, a lot of the work I'm doing is very running gun. It's solo. It's really fast moving stuff where if there is a little bit of shake, it's probably not even noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not perfectly tack sharp, it's fine. So that works.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think that's good feedback, just for people in general too, because I think nowadays with how much autofocus is touted, it's so easy to just be like, well, dude, I need the most focus points on the camera that I'm gonna buy. Da 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 da. Oh, I don't want that old thing because it doesn't even have autofocus. You know, like it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
wrap for some people to wrap their heads around that. But I feel
Oh,
like the
dude.
more experience, the more you're like, it's a good thing, you know, to
Yeah.
not have it sometimes. But.
I mean, I would challenge you to find, again, outside of maybe certain specific use cases, like with a really close detail shot in an eye or something,
Mm-hmm.
I would challenge you to find a high level DP commercially who's shooting with autofocus. Like you
Oh yeah.
won't, that does not happen. Like that's
Yeah.
not, people don't, like you don't, there's a reason cine cameras don't have autofocus
Mm-hmm.
because no one needs it.
Yep.
And I mean that, dude, I get that question all the time when people find out I'm shooting Moto. Like that's a really common DM. You don't use autofocus? Like no,
Mm.
not now. Again, right tool for the right job, and in certain situations, sure. And I'm not hate. I get some people are great using autofocus and they get good work. So I'm not hating on anyone who uses autofocus, but like it's definitely
For
not
sure.
the industry standard to use
Yeah.
autofocus for video. Now the new autofocus on the Canon stuff for stills is unreal, and it's
Yeah.
so nice. What
Lean into
are
that.
you on Canon?
I'm on Sony.
Okay,
Yep.
nice.
So full Sony boy. Have been. That was the first camera I bought. Was like an A6300. I think it was pretty early on with like the whole mirrorless push. You know. So I saw that. I remember even picking like a few photographers that I knew growing up. Like, hey, what should I do? And they were like, don't do mirrorless. It's like a fad. You know, like you got to have a mirror in there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do mirrorless because it's cheaper. Was my big thing. And then yeah, little did I know, man, it would just blow up. And yeah, I'm glad I went the route I did. I feel sometimes like boxed into the ecosystem just because like I have lenses and I've got, you know, the whole thing how they do it. But
I mean,
I've
I'm the
actually been
same.
looking at a Komodo or like a Komodo X or something. The
Yeah.
Ronin
The X,
4D was another one, but
if you're looking to go the cine route, I would say the X. I wish I had gotten the X, which I mean wasn't
yeah.
really an option for me. It came out like a year and a half after I got my Komodo, so it's not like it was
Oh,
like
okay.
I wasn't like too bummed because it's not like I missed it by like a month or something. But
Yeah.
the X, at least on paper, I haven't actually shot with an X yet, but on paper it solves every single issue I have with the Komodo, minus it not being full frame. But honestly,
Okay.
that's not that big of a deal. You just get wider
Yeah.
lenses.
Yeah.
I mean,
Does it have
full,
internal NDs?
no,
No?
the X is not.
Okay.
That's the one thing it doesn't solve. But no red has internal NDs, so if you want to shoot on red,
Okay.
that's not even an option anyway. So,
Gotcha. Does it have an XLR input?
I think so. So yeah, it has more
Okay.
inputs. I believe it has XLR. It has built-in V mount because right now I have to run an adapter, which
Oh,
is fine, but it just makes the
yeah.
camera bigger. So it's like
That's nice.
it's just nicer to have it built in. Frame rate wise, like I wish I could shoot 6K 60 because on the Komodo you get 6K 40 and then you have to get 60 frames, you have to get down to 4K, which the resolution wise I don't mind, like 4K is plenty, but I mean obviously having the extra is nice, but 4K is fine. But the issue on the
Yeah.
red when you crop in or when you downscale resolution, it crops in the sensor because it's still doing a full scan. It's just scanning a smaller portion of the sensor so that it can like transfer more data.
Okay.
And so the Komodo X, I think you can do 6K 80 which
Oh,
means I
cool.
would never have to go to 4K. And if you do want to go to 4K, I think it's like 120, which would be great to have
Yeah,
the
that'd be nice
option.
to have. Yeah.
But like 6K 80, I could live in 6K. That'd be great because I rarely shoot more than 60.
Cool.
And so, yeah, that's the biggest thing it would solve. And then the V mount's nice, the XLR is nice. So I would go the X if I was going to be new to the Red ecosystem. Or I mean, if you have the money, obviously the Raptor is really sick, but that's a really huge investment.
Yeah.
I feel like unless you're doing projects that warrant it, it's not worth it. But.
Yeah, big jump up, but no, that's cool. Yeah, I geek out about equipment. I'm probably a little too much so, you know, all the new stuff I like geek out about, get a Pelican, foam inserts. I like love that aspect of the industry, you know, I guess, but can be distracting. Yeah.
It can be, but it's also part of it. Like you've got to, I mean, there's a fine line, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm on an R6. My primary stills camera is an R6, which is like a freaking dinosaur at this point. Like, you know, but like my images are not going to get better if I get an R1 or an R5 too. Like it'd be nice that maybe the AF's a little bit better and maybe there's little perks about it, but like the images out of the R6 are amazing. Like I'm running a business. Why would I purchase a camera I don't need? I'd rather put that money towards glass or towards a gimbal or towards, you know, whatever. It's like, but
it's a good perspective.
That being said, you gotta like be stoked by your gear and like, I don't know. And you also, I think, always gotta be buying gear to a certain extent. New stuff that you're excited about that's gonna like, you know, like say you've never done much gimbal work. It's like, well, maybe get a gimbal and like, or at least rent one and like try some new stuff because it's gonna like probably improve your work or at least make you look at things differently. Maybe you hate working on a gimbal, but like at least you've maybe looked at a new way of doing something.
Yeah. I think if gear is inspiring you to create, it's a great thing, right?
100%.
But if it's like debilitating, you're like, oh, I don't want to go shoot because I don't have, you know, fill in the blank. Then it's like, dude, you gotta take a hard look and kind of maybe reprioritize a little bit.
That is phenomenal advice. Phenomenal advice. Like make do with what you have, and that's like me, like pulling focus on a photo glass.
Oh yeah.
Is it the industry standard of cinema? Would I rather have a focus puller and have a $10,000 piece of heavy ass cinema glass in my lens in front of my camera on a Raptor? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not that would never work in the situations I'm in most of the time, and B, it's not economical and it doesn't make sense for what I'm doing. So it's like work with what you have.
Yeah.
And granted, I understand that what I have is really nice, and it's a lot of people would love to have my kit, but it was the same way when I was shooting on dude, the first 3 years of my professional life, I was shooting on like a base model Canon DSLR that shot like 720 at like 30 frames a second. I don't even know if I think I could shoot 60 maybe, but
okay,
like, which back then was not as extreme, but it definitely was not industry spec at all. And I made it work, you know, and it's what I learned on, like, it's what taught, like, when you're starting out, gear does not matter at all. It's you that you need to develop, and then you can get the gear later on. So
that's great advice too. No, that's sound, dude. Just get out and like you've been saying this whole recording, dude. Just reps, right? No matter what it is, get after it. Reps. So. Cool, man. Well, that's all the questions I had, and I feel like we've had a good discussion. We're going on a little over 2 hours right now, so unless there was something else you wanted to talk about, I'm happy to keep chatting.
No, I mean, I could talk all night, but
I'm similar.
Yeah. Oh, that was rad. I feel like we got a little. People are gonna have to deal with a little rambliness in the middle there if we don't cut that out. But
that's why they listen to podcasts, right? Rambling.
We got some good nuggets there at the end. That was fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again for being willing to hop on and like I said, be my guinea pig on this first episode. So
yeah, man, this is my first time doing a podcast actually. So pretty
cool.
Fun first experience for both of us.
Sweet. Well, I can't say I've had a ton of guests, but as far as I know, you've killed it. So looks good.
Appreciate it. You crushed it as a host. So well done.
I'll just sit there and let you tell your stories because they're all rad. But cool, man. Well, yeah, like I said, appreciate it. Hopefully I see you one of these days. I feel like we operate in similar spheres, and especially if you want to get more into mountain biking stuff, we'll have to connect one of these days in person and actually go shoot or grab lunch or something.
Yeah, I'd love to link up. It'd be great to shoot something together, but at the very least, if we're in the same area, let's grab coffee or grab lunch. And hopefully would love to get into bike stuff. So we'll have to,
Yeah.
we'll have to scheme on something there.
Yeah, for sure. No, it'd be good to get your eye on more mountain bike stuff. I saw a little bit on your Instagram page, but
I've
yeah,
done a
give
bit.
me
I've
a work your
dabbled,
way.
but nothing pro level by any means, like a lot of lifestyle stuff. But
Yeah, no, we'll make it happen. Sweet.
yeah,
Sweet, man. Well, holler if I can ever give you a hand, but thanks again.
likewise. Thanks for
All
having me
right.
on. Fun times.
Yeah, sweet. We'll catch you later.